Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 1. Countless cracks spread across the broken ground, and black smoke obscured the light of the setting sun. Countless people struggled to walk on the muddy road, their faces filled with despair and fear. Occasionally someone would fall into a crack and the sound of crying never stopped. Tens of thousands of people were lined up in a long line. On both sides of the line, there was a strong warrior protecting them at set intervals. These people were called Evolvers. Evolvers had appeared one after another after the cataclysm on Earth half a year ago. At the back of the line, Lu Yin looked up into the distance and heard a scalp-numbing chewing sound. With a growl, a 2-meter-long mutant dog with scarlet eyes rushed out from behind a burning tree. Blood dripped from the corner of its mouth as it snarled and charged towards the line. Many of the survivors in the line screamed in horror at the sight. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he pulled out a strange weapon from his waist. It looked like an iron rod, but one side was sharpened like a blade. Lu Yin jumped up and chopped down with one hand, easily beheading the mutant dog. Blood sprayed onto the ground and dyed the grass red. Seeing the mutant dog die, the line quieted down and continued forward in fear. Lu Yin pulled back his iron rod and looked at it. There were a few cracks on it. Looks like this won't last long. As the sun set and the earth fell into darkness, all of the Evolvers lit fires and spread them along the line. They tried to use this method to drive away the mutant beasts, but the line stopped moving. Going to an unfamiliar place in the dark was suicide. The hoarse sound of electricity rang out as a voice came from the walkie-talkie at Lu Yin's waist. Evolvers ending with number 3 are looking for food. Range 1 kilometer. Lu Yin's evolver code was 103. He looked up at the dead mutant dog and threw it in front of the line. Eat it. There was a clamor from the line and a few men stepped forward to deal with it. They were already used to it even though the mutant dog still had human bones in its mouth. One mutant dog was only enough for about 20 people. Lu Yin walked out of the fire, gripping his iron rod tightly as he walked into the distance. The chewing sounds never stopped, and in the darkness, pairs of glowing green eyes stared at Lu Yin. These were mutant rats. Although they looked ugly, their meat was edible. Lu Yin swung his iron rod and killed more than 10 of them before throwing them to the line. He had enough on his side. Suddenly there was a scream. Lu Yin didn't need to look to know that it was an evolver who had died, but he didn't plan to save them. Who knew what attacked them? Perhaps it was a poisonous snake, a blood-sucking mosquito, or a mutant rat that could crush steel. These creatures were not difficult to encounter in the wild. The team was very quiet. Everyone hid behind the flames as if the thin layer of flames could really protect them. Lu Yin looked at them with pity before looking up at the sky. The sky was bright and resplendent, and the polluted air had been completely restored half a year ago. Along with it, countless creatures had mutated, including humans themselves. The changes weren't drastic, but they could become stronger by consuming the crystals of mutant creatures. The blood-stained newspaper rustled under the weight of rocks. Lu Yin picked it up and read the headline. February 3, 2200. A date that will go down in history. On that day, China's Skyward 5 landed on Neptune. Bai Qian became the first astronaut on Earth to explore Neptune. Neptune was a gaseous planet. That day, Lu Yin tossed the newspaper aside, and a little girl carefully handed him a roasted beast leg. He took it and smiled. Thank you. The little girl smiled shyly and ran back to the line. The beast leg tasted disgusting. Although it had been seasoned, it still tasted awful. But Lu Yin was satisfied with it. He only had strength when he was full. The flames suddenly flickered, and Lu Yin took out his iron rod and smashed it down viciously, killing a mutant mantis that had passed through the flames. This type of mantis would cause a lot of casualties if it charged into the group. Its blades reflected a red light, not inferior to Lu Yin's iron rod. Lu Yin only rested for 2 hours throughout the night, and during that time he killed more than 10 mutant creatures that had tried to attack the group. There weren't many casualties on his side, but it was a different story in the other areas. Dozens of survivors and cultivators had been slaughtered by a giant mutant boar. The beast could shoot out its tough mane, and a single round of attack could take away many lives. If not for the help of a few stronger cultivators, the casualties would have been even greater. As the sun rose, the group continued south. They were heading to Jinling, the largest gathering place in the Su province. There was an army there, many cultivators, and Zhou Xian, known as China's executioner. The apocalyptic cataclysm that lasted for half a year had given birth to many evolvers, including the peerless powerhouses known as the Seven Sages. Although information was not flowing smoothly, they could still communicate with each other. Not long ago, evolvers had been clearly divided into levels. They were divided into ordinary evolvers who had just swallowed a crystal, human-level powerhouses who had the power to crush ordinary evolvers, and above them were those who had the power to destroy cities. They were called earth-shaking powerhouses or earth-level powerhouses. At the very top were sky shakers. As the name implied, they could fly and were known as sky shakers. The seven sages of China were seven sky shakers. Half a year after the apocalypse, it could only be divided like this. Perhaps after a period of time, there would be a more systematic division. However, as long as those seven experts who could fly in the sky didn't die, they would forever stand at the top. This was also the origin of the word, saint. Perhaps it was also because countless survivors hoped for their protection, so they were called saints. The Jinlin colony had a saint, the executioner Zhou Xian. The group continued forward. They were still more than 100 kilometers away from Jinling. A journey that would have taken several hours in peacetime would now take several days. Several kilometers away from the long line, countless wandering zombies slowly approached, as if they had caught the scent of living creatures. The evolvers on both sides of the team were on high alert. Many of them had fear in their eyes. Although these zombies were not fast, they were very strong. Their blood contained a deadly poison, and if they came into contact with it, even the evolver's skin would fester until they lost their consciousness. That was the most terrifying thing. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes and tightened his grip on his iron rod. Fighting these zombies wasn't difficult. They would always be the same, unlike cultivators who could grow stronger. This was something the survivors were thankful for. If zombies could grow stronger as well, then they really wouldn't be able to survive. Right now, the survivors' greatest enemy was the mutated beasts. Just as Lu Yin and the rest were about to engage the horde, the zombies suddenly stopped and turned to leave. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat as a bad premonition welled up in him. The ground suddenly shook. In front of the team, a huge vine rose up from the ground. The branches and leaves seemed to have a mind of their own as they caught many survivors. Along with the screams of despair, all the survivors who were caught were crushed into a pool of blood and poured into the ground where the vine had taken root. All of the survivors fled in fear, including many of the cultivators. Lu Yin's eyelids twitched. This mutated vine was definitely at the realm of earth. It wasn't something a normal cultivator could contend with, even if they had a human-level powerhouse in their group. The cultivators in the group didn't plan on fighting it head-on, so they all fled to the back to avoid the vine's range. After a while, the vine seemed to have eaten its fill and retreated back into the ground. Countless survivors cried out in despair. Many of them had a mental breakdown in such an environment, and even some of the cultivators were no exception. Soon, the hoarse sound of static could be heard from the walkie-talkie at his waist. "Rest here. The executioner will personally come to pick us up." Many cheered at the news. To the survivors, a realm of sky powerhouse was like a god. It was as if anything could be resolved with the appearance of a realm of sky powerhouse. Lu Yin sneered, "A saint?" He held his left arm with one hand. Half of his body was still in pain, a bone-piercing pain that would forever remind him of what had happened that night. An entire city had been abandoned, and all of the undestroyed firearms had been unleashed upon the city. Wails of agony could be heard everywhere as half of his body was burned away. When he looked back, he saw a pair of lofty eyes and a piercing golden light. Lu Xiaoge would never forget the man known as the Light Saint, one of the seven sages. He had made him experience extreme pain, and Lu Yin swore to repay this pain tenfold. As the flames rose, the sky darkened. Just as Lu Yin was about to rest, he heard screams and cries nearby. Lu Yin frowned and turned around to see a few girls surrounded by a dozen cultivators 100 meters away. They were teasing them wantonly, and a few of them were barely clothed as tears streamed down their cheeks. This scene wasn't unfamiliar to Lu Yin. It was normal for people to fall into depravity after the apocalypse. Lu Yin had seen it many times before, and it was impossible to be protected in such an environment without paying a price. Lu Yin closed his eyes and relaxed his mind. In the distance, a girl screamed as she was slapped to the ground. Damn it, I'm risking my life to protect you. What's wrong with playing around? Don't be so shameless. I played with a small celebrity 2 days ago, and now I won't play with her even if she begs me. Get up. The girl glared angrily at the cultivator, her eyes red. The cultivators around them grinned. They loved this era where they could play without restraint and no one could control them. A gust of wind blew past and another person appeared in front of the cultivator. It was Lu Yin, and he had his iron rod pressed against the cultivator's neck. Scram, he said indifferently. The surroundings were silent and only the girl's silent cries could be heard. The cultivator's expression turned ugly and he gritted his teeth. Lu, this has nothing to do with you. They're under my protection. You're disturbing me, Lu Yin said indifferently, pressing down with the sharp side of the rod. The cultivator's skin immediately split open and blood flowed down the rod. The cultivator was aghast. Fine, you're ruthless. They're yours, I won't touch them. Lu Yin put away the rod and walked back to his original spot. Many people in the group watched the scene quietly, already used to it. Even when the girls had been killed, no one had helped. Lu Yin seemed very strange to them. The cultivators glared at each other angrily, but they didn't act rashly. They knew that Lu Yin was very strong. The girls ran behind Lu Yin wanting to say something, but he closed his eyes and ignored them. They could only look at him gratefully and carefully sit down. Not long after, a beautiful young woman in revealing clothes smiled as she walked over to Lu Yin's side. Her sharp gaze swept past the girls, scaring them into backing away and lowering their heads in fear. Only then was the beautiful woman satisfied. She sat down beside Lu Yin and blew into his ear. Lu Yin grabbed her neck, opened his eyes and said coldly, "If there's a next time you'll die." The girl's gaze was cold but she forced a charming smile. "You're still so heartless." Lu Yin let go and stared at her coldly. "What's the matter?" She rubbed her neck and rolled her eyes. "You've offended someone, don't you know?" Lu Yin didn't reply. She continued, "Zhang Tong and the others are plotting against you. There are more than 10 of them and you're alone. Be careful." "Thank you," Lu Yin replied indifferently. The star step art had been released, and an even more magnificent picture of the starry sky was about to unfold. Thank you for your support. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 2. She looked at him helplessly. "Actually, as long as you ask, I'll help you. I have people behind me as well." "There's no need," Lu Yin replied. She sighed. "All right, we'll keep in touch. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on them for you. Bye." She smiled at him and left, leaving behind a fragrant wind. Lu Yin closed his eyes once more. Her arrival didn't affect him at all. In the middle of the night she arrived once more and smiled at him. "Congratulations, there's no more trouble." Lu Yin looked at her suspiciously. She replied, "I asked my brother to help. Zhang Tong was captured and he wants you to discuss how to deal with them." Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he stood up. "Let's go." She smiled and led the way, passing through the flames until they were about 300 meters away from the team. Although this place wasn't safe, it wasn't too far away either. When Lu Yin arrived, Zhang Tong, the cultivator who had bullied the women, and a dozen others beside him were all kneeling on the ground. A tall man stood in front of them with his hands clasped behind his back. "Brother, Lu Yin's here," the woman said sweetly as she walked up to him. The man turned around and smiled at Lu Yin. "Are you Lu Yin?" Lu Yin nodded. "I'm Lu Xing, one of the captains of this team," the man said with his head held high, looking at Lu Yin proudly. "I know," Lu Yin replied. Lu Xing frowned, not liking Lu Yin's attitude. "What do you plan to do with these people?" "I'll leave them to you." Lu Yin looked at him. "What are your conditions?" Lu Xing's lips curled up as he stared at Lu Yin. "I won't beat around the bush. I've heard about you and observed you. You probably haven't absorbed any energy crystals from mutant beasts, but you're very powerful. Can you tell me why?" The woman looked at Lu Yin expectantly from the side, as did Zhang Tong and the other cultivators kneeling on the ground. Lu Yin smiled. "Is that why you lured me here?" Lu Xing smiled and looked at the woman. The girl took a few steps forward and walked to Lu Yin's side. She blew at him and asked, "Brother Lu, can you tell us? Is there another path to evolution?" Telling us is the same as telling the entire human race. The entire human race will be grateful to you and I can accompany you. Lu Yin turned to look at her. I've said it before. If there's a next time you'll die. As soon as he finished speaking, the iron rod flashed and she clutched at her neck. Blood flowed down her fingers and dyed her clothes red. She fell to the ground in disbelief. She had not taken Lu Yin's words seriously, nor had she thought that Lu Yin would dare to kill her in front of Lu Xing. Lu Xing was one of the captains, a mortal rank powerhouse. Lu Xing was stunned as well as he had not expected Lu Yin to be so bold. Lu Yin swung his staff. You guys are really annoying. You've been eyeing me ever since this team was formed. Let's end this tonight. He then charged towards Lu Xing and swung his staff down. You're courting death. Lu Xing was enraged. He pulled out a long sword from his waist and used it to block the iron staff. He had thought that this attack would not only block Lu Yin's attack, but it would also severely injure him. However, reality was the complete opposite of what he had expected. His sword was split in two, and the iron staff's blade even left a deep gash on his right shoulder that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Lu Xing was in disbelief. He was a mortal rank powerhouse who could take on many ordinary cultivators, but he had been defeated in one move by Lu Yin. How was this possible? Lu Yin did not stop after injuring Lu Xing and swung his iron rod again. Lu Xing hurriedly dodged and flipped to the side, throwing the hilt of his sword at Lu Yin. Lu Yin deflected the hilt with a swing of his staff, the force of his attack leaving a small crack in the ground. What are you looking at? Attack together and kill him. Lu Xing roared, glaring at Zhang Tong and the rest. Zhang Tong and the rest did not hesitate and pulled out all sorts of weapons to attack Lu Yin. Lu Yin's gaze was cold as he flipped the metal rod over and kicked out forcefully. Shockwaves that could be seen with the naked eye caused the ground to crack as his body traversed a distance of more than 10 meters. Zhang Tong and the rest looked at their chests as blood dripped down. Soon they lost all consciousness and collapsed to the ground, dead. Lu Yin's heart was as hard as steel. This was the worst era with no restrictions, but it was also the best era where evil could be eliminated. Lu Xing stared blankly at Lu Yin. How is this possible? You're an Earth Realm powerhouse. You're definitely one. A mortal rank powerhouse can't be this strong. Lu Yin's gaze was cold. Lu Xing trembled and knelt on the ground. Lu Yin, no, Master Lu, please let me go. I'll be your dog, I'll kill for you, I'll find women for you. I'll do anything you want. Lu Yin raised his head and looked at the sky. Lu Xing's gaze was ruthless as he pulled out a blade and stabbed it at Lu Yin. The blade successfully pierced Lu Yin, but the Lu Yin in front of him slowly faded away. Lu Xing's pupils shrank as he stared at the scene in disbelief. What was this? This is called the roving step. It's a battle technique that comes from outer space, Lu Yin said indifferently as the iron rod swept past. Lu Xing's head drooped as he knelt on the ground, dead. Lu Yin sighed and put the iron rod away, still looking at the sky. I'm just a guest, but I'm stealing the show. Lu Yin quickly took the energy crystals from Lu Xing and the rest and approached the ring on his finger. Suddenly, the crystals disappeared as if they had never existed. This was a cosmic ring, a precious storage ring that was similar to battle techniques in that it also came from outer space. No one cared about the disappearance of Zhang Tong and the rest, but Lu Xing was different. He was a captain, and now that he had disappeared, it attracted the attention of the other captains. However, because Lu Xing wanted to steal Lu Yin's method of evolution, he had purposely hidden his whereabouts, so no one came looking for trouble. It could be said that Lu Xing had brought this upon himself. At noon the next day, tens of thousands of people looked up into the sky. They had just received news that the executioner Zhou Xian was about to arrive. Not long after, a black dot appeared in front of everyone's eyes, followed by a muscular man who was over 2 meters tall with short hair. He held a mountain-splitting axe in his hand that was over 3 meters long, towering in the sky with a domineering aura. Everyone stared blankly at this scene. Could humans really fly? Was this a realm of ascension? One of China's 7 sages? Zhou Xian didn't say a word as he raised his hand and pressed downwards. The shockwave kicked up a cloud of dust that made it hard for everyone to open their eyes. All of the cultivators looked forward with burning eyes. This was the power of a realm of sky powerhouse, enough to destroy mountains and rivers. Giant vines snaked out of the ground and viciously swept towards Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian snorted, his voice exploding in everyone's ears. Then he raised his giant axe up high. The air behind him rippled and vaguely turned into transparent wings. Storm slash. With a loud shout, Zhou Xian's body tumbled down with the giant axe and slashed at the vines. An earth-shattering explosion rang out and huge cracks spread out in all directions on the ground. Dust flew everywhere and strands of energy scattered in all directions. Fortunately, there was the Evolver captain blocking the front, otherwise just the energy alone would have caused huge casualties to the survivors. Lu Yin stared ahead. Yesterday they had all guessed that the vines were of the realm of sky, but he was the only one who felt that they were of the realm of sky. This was why Zhou Xian had gone all out. A gust of wind blew past, and when the dust settled, Zhou Xian's domineering figure appeared before everyone's eyes. The vines had been completely pulverized, and there was a huge crater in the ground that was filled with green liquid. Tens of thousands of people looked up at Zhou Xian in reverence and cheered. Zhou Xian raised his axe and soared into the sky, shouting, "Let's go back to Nanjing, it's safe there." "Thank you, Executioner. Long live the Executioner. Executioner." Tens of thousands of people chanted Zhou Xian's name. Heroes were needed in these apocalyptic times. Zhou Xian was a hero and so was the 7 sages. Lu Yin gripped his staff tightly. His current strength had yet to reach the realm of sky, and just as Lu Xing had said, he hadn't absorbed any energy crystals. He wanted to walk another path of evolution, the true path of evolution in the heavens. Thinking about it, he looked up. Soon they should be here soon. With Zhou Xian's protection, the group advanced smoothly. There were definitely powerful creatures in this world that were far stronger than Zhou Xian, but they were too rare to encounter. A day later, tens of thousands of people arrived at Nanjing. Only then did many of them put down their bags and burst into tears. Nanjing was under martial law and there were huge earthen walls outside. Rows of cultivators stood on top of the walls, silently watching the tens of thousands of survivors enter. Their eyes were filled with sorrow. This group had lost at least 1/10 of their population from the start to the end. Lu Yin had been to Nanjing during the era of peace, and the city had been beautiful with ancient trees lining the streets. Now, however, the city had shrunk significantly, and the outer perimeter had been abandoned. Countless wandering zombies filled the outer city, and if not for Zhou Xian opening the way, they would have had to fight a bloody battle to enter. The survivors would be taken care of, while the cultivators would be taken care of by another group. There were more than 500 cultivators in this group, and compared to the tens of thousands of survivors, one cultivator had to protect nearly 100 people. This ratio was relatively small, and it also proved that mutant creatures were not easy to kill. It was a pity that the zombies didn't have energy crystals, or there would be many more cultivators. Zhou Xian, the executioner, had set up an organization to manage all cultivators. All cultivators in Nanjing, regardless of whether or not they wanted to join, were required to register at the executioner's camp and have their strength and physical condition tested. Lu Yin's group was brought there. It wasn't just a single camp, but a huge one that occupied Nanjing's Zhongshan Mountain. Legend had it that when it was first established, there were countless zombies and mutant beasts. Zhou Xian had led all the cultivators there for a month to conquer Zhongshan, and that was only because Zhongshan had once been a tourist area in Nanjing that didn't have many wild mutant beasts. Zhongshan Mountain was the center of the camp, and it radiated outwards, gradually helping the survivors conquer Nanjing and making it one of the largest settlements in the East China region. The Zhongshan camp was solemn and dignified, and the cultivators around looked on enviously at the uniformed soldiers. They would be here in the future as well. It's only been half a year and the executioner has already established such a huge organization. It's unbelievable, someone sighed. Someone else immediately agreed. Many people are still hiding when the apocalypse comes, but the executioner has already established this camp. It'll definitely dominate all of China in the future. Many people agreed with this statement. Lu Yin walked among the cultivators, looking around at the soldiers that passed by from time to time. His eyes flashed. These soldiers were real soldiers. Logically speaking, with the arrival of the apocalypse, no matter how charismatic anyone was, they would not be able to create such an organization. Zhou Xian was even more unlikely. However, the camp still appeared. There could only be one reason. The people here were true soldiers. China hadn't collapsed because of the apocalypse, But it had stabilized in another way. Zhou Xian was part of the military and perhaps even the seven sages. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to reach the realm of sky in just half a year. Lu Yin wasn't sure if he should rejoice, but the apocalypse hadn't caused a complete breakdown in communications. Otherwise, even the country wouldn't have been able to stabilize itself in such a short time. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 3. Mount Zhongshan had been hollowed out, leaving behind a huge space filled with modern facilities that amazed the hundreds of cultivators. Groups of soldiers walked past, carrying standard steel knives on their backs. It was a strange sight, like a combination of modern and ancient times. As cultivators grew stronger, ordinary firearms were no longer as useful as cold weapons. Many of the armory had been destroyed, but the fact that they were still equipped with standard steel knives proved that the camp wasn't simple. Lu Yin and the rest were led to a huge plaza, surrounded by a circle of soldiers. There were also many female soldiers looking at them with solemn expressions. There was a layer of transparent glass about 10 meters above the plaza, revealing a huge space behind it. At this moment, a few men and women were standing near the glass, laughing as they looked down. I wonder if we'll be able to recruit some useful people this time. Even if they can't reach the human realm, they shouldn't be too weak, a middle-aged man said in a low, muffled voice. Don't get your hopes up. It's not that easy to reach the human realm. The captains of this group have already been assigned by the executioner. You and I didn't get a single one, a charming woman said unhappily. It's not impossible. It's not easy to protect tens of thousands of survivors from so far away. I value these people, so why don't you give them all to me? A young man laughed. Stop dreaming. Let's see how Feng Hong arranges it. He'll be the instructor this time, so he'll definitely take the lion's share. They were all captains of the camp. There were 80,000 cultivators in the camp, and only those who reached the Earth realm could become captains. Once they became a captain, they would become an overlord in Nanjing, only second to the executioner Zhou Xian. To the millions of survivors in Nanjing, executioners were rare and captains were like gods. I heard that the Luo sages' snow maidens are coming to Nanjing and will be sparring with us. Who do you plan on going up? The charming woman suddenly asked, smiling at the people beside her. They remained silent, not intending to answer. The charming woman laughed. Rumor has it that the Luo sage has declared the snow maidens to be invincible in the Earth realm. Are you sure you don't want to meet them? They still didn't speak. The charming woman pursed her lips into a smile and didn't say anything else. Luo Sage Bai Shui was the founder of Camp Blue. Although she was ranked alongside the executioner as one of the seven sages, her status was higher than his. In the eyes of outsiders, the seven sages of Wuxia were of equal status, but only a small number of people knew that the seven sages were divided into the 3 upper sages and the 4 lower sages. Luo Sage Bai Shui was one of the 3 upper sages, while Zhou Xian was one of the 4 lower sages. In the square, the evolvers were being examined one by one. The main reason was that many viruses had mutated after the apocalypse, especially the virus from zombies, which was very difficult to treat. The camp had to ensure that none of the evolvers were infected by the virus, otherwise it would be very dangerous. Soon it was Lu Yin's turn. Looking at the sample bottle that contained his blood, the nurse began to fill in his personal information. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he exerted force in his legs. His figure blurred, but in the next moment he returned to normal. No one saw it clearly, but the color of the blood in the sample bottle changed a little. It seemed to have a tinge of purple, but it quickly returned to normal. Lu Yin, is it? Please wait for a moment, it'll be ready soon, the nurse said with a smile. Lu Yin nodded. Thank you. He then walked to the other side. After a period of time, nearly 500 evolvers had finished their random inspection. There were no problems. Not long after, a middle-aged man wearing a dark military uniform walked over. As he approached, a wave of pressure arose spontaneously. All the evolvers looked at him in astonishment. The ground split open as a shockwave swept out, shocking all the evolvers present. Earth-grade. An Earth-grade powerhouse. Someone exclaimed, causing all the evolvers to look at the middle-aged man with fear and envy. The middle-aged man walked until he was about 10 meters away from Lu Yin and the rest. My name is Feng Hong and I'm a captain of the camp. Let me ask you again, if any of you are unwilling to join the camp, you may leave. Hundreds of evolvers looked at each other and then one after another people walked out. Although the camp was powerful, they had to be disciplined. Many had never been in the army before, so it was normal for them not to want to join. Lu Yin was one of them. There were nearly 200 people who didn't want to join the camp, which was nearly half of the total number. Feng Hong looked at the evolvers who didn't want to join and said indifferently, "Not only will your safety be guaranteed if you join, but you can also bring your loved ones to Zhou Xian. You'll be given energy crystals to train every month, and you'll also be taught battle techniques by the executioner." "What's a battle technique?" someone asked curiously. Feng Hong replied coldly, "It's a technique that allows you to display 200% of your strength. The executioner's battle technique is the Storm Slash, and there aren't many people in the world who can block it. You should have seen it before." The evolvers were all excited. Of course they'd seen it before. It had destroyed the mutated vines and caused the earth to split open. "Can we learn the Storm Slash?" someone asked expectantly. Feng Hong replied coldly, "Anyone can learn it as long as they are acknowledged by the executioner." The evolvers who were about to leave hesitated and returned to their original groups. There were less than 50 people who really wanted to leave, and Lu Yin was one of them. Feng Hong waved his hand, "Take them away." Soon nearly 50 of them were led out of Zhongshan. Lu Yin looked back. This place would soon be in turmoil. Many survivors and even evolvers had gathered outside Zhongshan, and when Lu Yin and the rest came out, they all gathered around. "Brother, do you want to buy a house? You can look for me, the price is definitely fair." "Brother, do you need a tour guide? Don't look at me like that, there are too many zombies and monsters outside Nanjing. Without a guide you'll easily be surrounded." "Brother, do you need weapons? We have sharp blades, hard spears, whatever you need. We even have firearms if you want. Buy a few bombs to defend yourself." "Do you have a map?" Lu Yin asked. A shifty-eyed evolver immediately came over and scanned the area fiercely, scaring off his fellow evolvers before carefully taking out a map. "Brother, this map costs 10 crystals." Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. 10 crystals? Are you crazy? 10 crystals for a map? Don't you know that 1 crystal is enough for a normal person to evolve? The shifty-eyed evolver whispered, "Brother, this isn't an ordinary map. It has detailed locations of powerful monsters and zombies in Jinling's outer city. You don't want to be surrounded as soon as you go out, right? This is related to your life. Isn't your life worth 10 crystals?" Lu Yin laughed. 3 at most, no more. The shifty-eyed evolver readily agreed. "All right, we'll be friends. Take the map." Lu Yin felt like he had been cheated, but he didn't mind. He reached into his robes and took out 3 white crystals the size of rice grains, handing them over to the cultivator. The shifty-eyed cultivator took the crystals with excitement in his eyes. He approached Lu Yin and whispered, "Bro, since you're so straightforward, I'll give you something for free. No need to thank me." He then stuffed a round pill into Lu Yin's hand and turned to leave. Lu Yin looked at the pill with a strange expression. He recognized it as an aphrodisiac. Many plants had mutated after the apocalypse, and medicines from peaceful times had long since become obsolete. Medicines made from mutated plants were much more effective, and Lu Yin had seen people use them before. They were definitely effective, but these pills were very precious. If they were sold for more than 3 crystals, where had this guy gotten them? Lu Yin didn't think too much about it and threw the pills away. He looked around and walked out of the city. He studied the map carefully, finally settling on a barren mountain south of the city. "I hope there are some clues here." On the top floor of Mount Zhong's internal space, the huge conference room was filled with people. The seat at the head of the table was empty. On the left of the first seat was a man with a scar on his face and wearing a military uniform. On the right of the first seat was a beautiful girl wearing glasses. Most of the people sitting here were captains of the prison camp. After a while, Zhou Xian entered the room and naturally took the seat of honor. He looked around at everyone and finally at the girl with glasses. "How's the plan coming along?" The girl pushed up her glasses. "According to initial estimates, it will take at least 2 months to expand the Jinling colony, and the loss of combatants may reach 2,000 to 3,000. If we want to expand the territory of Jinling into the colony during peacetime, the loss will increase by 3 times. Zhou Xian frowned. "We have to expand the colony. The push north is going smoothly, and we'll be able to connect to the capital in a few months. Then the entire country will be connected and it'll be easy to reclaim our territory. We can't fall behind and become a laughingstock. Executioner, we've just received news that a realm of sky powerhouse has been born in India, the bitter monk, the scarred man suddenly said. There were only 7 realm of sky powerhouses in all of China, and the difficulty of reaching that level was obvious. No one had expected one to appear in India. Zhou Xian's gaze turned cold. The bitter monk? Check his information. Logically speaking, it's impossible for anyone to break through within a year. Understood. Is there anything else? Zhou Xian continued. One of the evolvers was just about to speak when he suddenly looked out of the window in a daze. The others followed suit and also looked out of the window in a daze. Zhou Xian abruptly turned around and looked out the window, his eyes narrowing. Dozens of meteors streaked across the sky, leaving long trails of flame behind them. One of them was headed straight for Nanjing, landing south of the colony and causing the ground to shake. At this moment, countless survivors and evolvers saw this scene. The meteors in the sky were like dazzling fireworks and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Outside Nanjing, Lu Yin, who had followed the map to the barren mountains south of the city, also saw the meteor that had crashed not too far away from him. Violent shockwaves swept across the sky, blowing away the clouds and causing the ground to crack. He kicked aside a steel frame that had smashed into him and looked south. After thinking for a moment, he rushed over. Within Nanjing, Zhou Xian rose into the air and tried to rush south, but he was stopped. Executioner, countless zombies are attacking the city walls. Zhou Xian turned to the east and saw a black mass of zombies roaming towards them. Nanjing had already been sealed off and many of the survivors were still trapped outside, crying out in despair. Zhou Xian flew out of the city with his mountain-splitting axe and swung it at the ground, slicing through countless zombies. Open the gates and let them in. I'll protect them. South of Jinling City, where the meteor landed, smoke and dust rose into the sky. A huge cone-shaped crater with a radius of 1,000 meters was located at the bottom of the crater. It was 2 meters in diameter and emitted white smoke. The air around it was distorted. Lu Yin approached the crater and hid in an abandoned factory not far from it. He looked at the white sphere through the wooden planks, his expression changing slightly. Although he had guessed that it would be there, he still hadn't expected it to actually appear. It's a spaceship, he muttered. With a soft sound, the door of the white spacecraft opened and a hand reached out. After a pause, a young man walked out of the spacecraft. He had short hair and he wore white light armor and battle boots. He slowly walked out of the spacecraft, looked up and stretched lazily. So tiring. If it's a trial, then so be it. Why did they choose such a distant place and even make us fly here? How disgusting. After saying that, the youth took out a short knife from the spacecraft and a wristwatch that he wore on his left wrist. He tapped the wristwatch and a beeping sound could be heard. The youth's eyes narrowed as he looked in Lu Yin's direction. As he spoke, he leaped up and pulled out his dagger to slash horizontally. With a huge slash, the factory was split into 2. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 4. Lu Yin stooped to avoid the blow, fleeing a dozen meters away. The factory had been reduced to rubble. The youth soared into the sky and looked at Lu Yin with arrogance. You're a native of this planet? Lu Yin's gaze turned solemn. A realm of sky powerhouse. I'm asking you a question, didn't you hear? The youth growled, casually slashing out with his sword. A visible slash cut through the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Are you an alien? Lu Yin asked solemnly. The youth sneered and landed on the ground, glancing at his watch. Only 8 power? Wait, that's not enough to dodge my attack. He looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. You specialize in physical training? You're an alien, aren't you? The youth frowned. Natives like you can call us that, but we prefer you call us masters. Masters? Lu Yin frowned. The youth looked down. Your planet has long been under the surveillance of the Great Yu Empire. To us, you're just natives in captivity, so of course we're masters. Alright, tell me, did you specialize in physical training and reach the Seeker realm or even close to the Sentinel realm? I don't know what you mean, Lu Yin replied. The youth narrowed his eyes and thought about it. How could this native planet know about the realms? His eyes flashed coldly as he stared at Lu Yin. "Attack me, show me your strength." Lu Yin clenched his fists. "Are you sure?" The youth sneered. "I, Vesta, won't be injured by a native like you. Even if you can hide your strength, you can't possibly reach the Sentinel realm. Even a Sentinel can't compare to me. I'll show you the true meaning of despair." Lu Yin pulled out his staff. "Then I'll make my move." Vesta curled his finger arrogantly. The next moment, Lu Yin charged towards Vesta, his staff slicing through the air as he aimed for Vesta's neck. Vesta easily dodged and stuck his hands in his pockets, teasing, "The planet's evolution really does give birth to barbarians. Their attacks are swift and decisive, and every move is a killing blow. That's good, it's the only way to create an iron-blooded warrior." Lu Yin's iron rod sealed off Vesta's escape route, each strike faster than the last. The force of each strike was like a sharp blade cutting into the ground, leaving scars in its wake. Vesta moved with ease, lifting his leg and blocking the blade with his boots while keeping his hands in his pockets. 302 power level. Not bad. It's not easy to reach the Seeker realm with your body alone. Even the Sentinels in our academy find it difficult to do so. I admire you, so I'll give you a chance. Follow me and become my slave, and I can take you away from this planet and show you a different universe. Lu Yin's iron rod pressed down on Vesta's boots, a look of surprise on his face. "A different sky?" Vesta replied proudly. "Of course, I'm a top student of the first military academy of the Great Yu Empire. I'm an elite with the qualifications and courage to apply for the planet's evolution trial. Once I complete the mission, I'll be promoted to a higher academy. Following me will be the glory of your life. Of course, that depends on whether there's anyone more suitable than you on this planet. You better pray that you're not too bad, huh?" He then kicked Lu Yin's staff away. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he watched Vesta bask in his arrogance. His right hand trembled rapidly, causing visible ripples in the air as if he had grasped it. Vesta didn't pay much attention at first, but when he saw it he couldn't believe his eyes. "Shockwave palm? How did you do that?" The next moment, Lu Yin slammed his palm into Vesta's chest, causing a shockwave to spread out and shatter his white armor. Vesta spat out a mouthful of blood as he struggled to lift his head in midair, twisting his body to pull out his dagger and slashing at Lu Yin. Lu Yin charged towards the dagger, his right hand trembling rapidly again. Vesta gritted his teeth. "You're not a native, you're from the stars." Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he struck out with his palm. Vesta growled and stabbed out with his dagger, but it hit nothing. Lu Yin's body had vanished, and the dagger had only hit an afterimage. A footwork battle technique? Vesta spat out a mouthful of blood as the ring on his finger melted, forming a suit of armor that covered his entire body. Bang! Vesta was struck in the same spot again, this time with a faint cracking sound. A second after he was struck, the armor covered his entire body, but it was too late. His heart had been completely shattered, and his body crashed into the crater beside the spacecraft, blood flowing out from the hull. Lu Yin half knelt on the ground, panting heavily as the blood vessels in his right hand burst. The shockwave palm wasn't something he could use right now, and if not for the fact that he wanted to kill Vesta, he wouldn't have risked losing his arm. Thankfully, the ambush had succeeded. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He had used 2 shockwave palms and 1 roving step in an instant, and his body was trembling violently from the overload. He slowly walked over to Vesta's corpse and watched as the armor covering his body slowly disappeared and turned back into a ring. Lu Yin took off the ring and stored it in his robes. It was a ring armor that many cultivators in the universe carried around. Vesta's ring armor was of the lowest grade, but it could withstand attacks from a realm of sky powerhouse. Besides the ring armor, Vesta also had a gadget on his wrist that contained all his information, including his location. Lu Yin removed the gadget and deftly removed the locator before storing it in his own cosmic ring. His eyes flickered as he scanned Vesta, finally settling on the second knuckle on his right hand. He cut it off and a chip fell out of the blood. "So it's here." Lu Yin was overjoyed as he picked up the chip. This was the reason he had ambushed Vesta and hadn't absorbed the energy crystals to become a cultivator. A formcast model was a chip condensed from a powerhouse's own energy. Anyone who fused it with their body would be able to stimulate their cells and cleanse their body, allowing them to break through Zhiji and directly absorb energy from the universe for cultivation. This was the most effective method of cultivation in the universe. As for absorbing energy crystals, it was an inferior method that couldn't directly absorb energy from the universe. Not only did one have to search for energy crystals, but it was also very difficult to break through Zhiji. People who cultivated this way were called wandering soldiers in the universe, and many even called them war slaves. The energy that could be directly absorbed in the universe was called star energy. The energy crystals in the bodies of mutated beasts were also a type of star energy, but it was too heterogeneous to absorb directly. Lu Yin had come from the universe, but in order to legitimize his identity, he hadn't used a form-cast model before coming to Earth. He had placed himself from the perspective of a normal person, but now that he was on this planet he didn't have to worry about anything. Anything was possible in the planetary evolution trial. In the universe, anyone who cultivated with a form-cast model had to register themselves, or else it would be illegal. However, in a planet's evolutionary trial, whatever one obtained was their own. This was a rule set by the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council, and no one could violate it. This person is only a sentinel, which means he's used the form-cast model twice. There's still one more chance, but I'll have to keep looking, Lu Yin muttered to himself as he tossed Vesta into the spaceship and turned to leave. Suddenly, a shadow covered the sun. Someone had attacked him from behind. Lu Yin dodged to the side and kicked out with his leg, meeting the attacker's attack head-on. It was an Earth Realm powerhouse. Lu Yin immediately reacted and retreated. The attacker also retreated a few steps and looked up, revealing a delicate face. It was a woman. Why did you attack me? Lu Yin's tone was cold. Although he hadn't sensed any killing intent from this woman, an attack was still an attack. She glanced at the spaceship and then stared at Lu Yin. I saw you throw the alien's corpse into the spaceship. Who are you? Why did you kill aliens? What do you know? Lu Yin sneered. Why should I tell you? I'll make you talk, she replied coldly, pulling out a dagger from her back and leaping towards Lu Yin. The dagger streaked through the air, emitting a cold glint. Lu Yin easily dodged, but the woman wasn't slow at all. Her dagger flew through the air, whistling as it tore through the air, each strike aimed at a vital point. Lu Yin passed through the cold glint and seized the opportunity to grab her wrist while his other hand reached for her abdomen. She frowned and stomped her feet on the ground, releasing the dagger and reaching out to meet Lu Yin's palm. The temperature suddenly dropped and Lu Yin's gaze froze as his palm froze. Battle technique? You're not my match. Tell me, she growled, the temperature dropping even further. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 5. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He hadn't recovered from the shockwave palm and he couldn't break free from the ice. Seeing the ice spreading, he had no choice but to use the roving steps with the woman. The woman's vision swayed as the scene changed. She was caught off guard and fainted, vomiting on reflex. Lu Yin tore off her sleeve, dropping a few extremely cold leaves to the ground where they quickly froze. I was wondering how you could use a supernatural battle technique. So you relied on external objects, he mocked. She gritted her teeth and glared at him. What did you just do? Battle technique? Lu Yin didn't answer, considering whether or not to silence her. At that moment the executioner Zhou Xian flew over from the horizon. Lu Yin was helpless. It was too late to silence her. The woman's expression turned ugly when she saw Zhou Xian. Lu Yin was puzzled. Was this woman not from the camp? Zhou Xian shouldn't have let a powerhouse in the realm of Earth go. There was a whoosh as Zhou Xian descended from the sky. His dignified gaze swept over Lu Yin and the girl before finally landing on the white spacecraft. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. Can someone explain this to me? He asked in a low voice. Lu Yin thought for a moment before replying. The spacecraft landed and someone inside wanted to kill me. Perhaps the impact was too severe and he wasn't my match, so I killed him instead. Zhou Xian stared at Lu Yin for a moment before looking at the woman. He wasn't in a hurry to check the spacecraft and smiled. Long time no see. You're the only Snow Lady here? She bowed. Snow Lady Zhao Yu greets the executioner. Lu Yin looked at her in shock. Snow Lady? He had heard of her before. She was a powerhouse under Luo Sheng's Blue Battalion in the Chongbai Mountains. Why would a Snow Lady appear in Nanjing? We haven't met since the cataclysm. Who would have thought that things would change so quickly? Zhou Xian sighed. Zhao Yu respectfully replied, Luo Xing sent me to congratulate you. The executioner has dominated the Su province. Congratulations. Zhou Xian smiled bitterly. What's there to congratulate me for? I can't compare to Luo Xing. I know how strong the 3 upper sages are, and you're stronger than all of my captains. Zhao Yu smiled. You flatter me, executioner sage. I just lost to this major of yours. He's really strong. Zhou Xian pointed at Lu Yin. Him? I don't know him. Zhao Yu was shocked. He's not a major general under your command? Zhou Xian understood that Zhao Yu had been defeated by Lu Yin. He stared at Lu Yin in astonishment. This person had actually defeated the Snow Lady. Lu Yin lowered his head and fell into deep thought. From Zhou Xian's tone, it seemed that they had known each other before the apocalypse, but they had not met after. This meant that Lu Yin had witnessed the strength of the upper 3 sages before the apocalypse. Indeed, the 7 sages had started training before the apocalypse. Lu Yin had once heard rumors that their exploration of Neptune had not been fruitless. They had actually found a war blade and a corpse. It was said that this discovery had almost led to a world war, but in the end China had to compromise and give the other countries some things before the apocalypse had ended. In that case, the reason why the 7 saints were able to cultivate was because they had obtained something from that corpse. Lu Yin clenched his fists. He hadn't guessed wrong, and the direction he'd been searching in had been correct. It was impossible for the 7 sages to know about formcast models. In that case, if the corpse belonged to a peerless expert, then there might still be a formcast model left in his body that could be used. That was his true target. Soon the army arrived. The leader of the army was a beautiful woman wearing glasses. Zhou Xian had the army seal off the area as he watched a few researchers in white lab coats explore the spacecraft. He then looked at Lu Yin. Little brother, what else do you know about this alien? Zhao Yu looked at Lu Yin as well. Lu Yin thought for a moment before answering. I heard a few things from him, such as the Academy's assessment, the trial of a primitive planet's evolution, and a mission. Zhou Xian's eyes flashed. That's all? Lu Yin nodded. He didn't say much, just wanted me to be his slave. He called us savages. Savages? Zhou Xian sneered and looked up at the sky. Looks like Earth won't be peaceful for long. Dozens of spaceships just landed, which means dozens of aliens. I never thought that the day of contact would come so soon. Lu Yin looked at Zhou Xian, who didn't seem surprised. Executioner, the spaceship is about to be transported back to Jinlin for analysis. The alien's heart was shattered and he died. According to our investigation, he should have a weapon, but we couldn't find anything after searching the area, the bespectacled woman reported. Lu Yin had destroyed the scene of the battle while searching for Vesta's body, so they couldn't even restore it. Zhou Xian looked at Lu Yin. Little brother, the alien's body is very useful for research. Can you hand it over? Don't worry, I'll return it to you once the research is complete. Lu Yin muttered to himself for a moment before pulling out the dagger. This is his weapon, I didn't take anything else. He then tore open his shirt to show Zhou Xian and the rest. Everything he had was stored in his cosmic ring, but Zhou Xian and the rest couldn't recognize it. They couldn't imagine a ring that could store space, so they naturally didn't care. Zhou Xian took the dagger and waved it casually, slicing through the ground. How sharp, this material really isn't from Earth. With that, Zhou Xian tossed the dagger to the bespectacled girl and scanned Lu Yin with a sharp gaze. When he saw that there really was nothing on him, he stepped forward and patted Lu Yin's shoulder, praising him. Not bad, little brother. What's your name? Are you interested in joining the camp? Are you interested in becoming a captain? Lu Yin agreed without hesitation. He had no choice but to do so. Zhou Xian seemed calm, but he had never let go of his suspicions. It wasn't just him. Everyone was wondering if Lu Yin was hiding something from the alien. Since they wouldn't let him go under such circumstances, Lu Yin might as well agree to avoid conflict. A realm of sky powerhouse wasn't something he could deal with right now, and Vesta wouldn't have been killed if he hadn't been too careless. Lu Yin was sure that the same method wouldn't work on Zhou Xian, and there were so many cultivators around. Zhao Yu frowned. I can't contact the Luo Xing. All communication lines were cut off the moment the aliens arrived. Zhou Xian nodded. The alien spacecraft destroyed all communication lines. I'll send people to repair them as soon as possible. Don't worry, even if aliens appear in the northeast, Camp Blue will be fine. The Luoxing is very strong. Zhao Yu nodded silently. Research on alien spacecraft wasn't something that could be done overnight. Fortunately, the spacecraft wasn't large and the army managed to transport it back to Nanjing in secret. Lu Yin was authorized to reside in Zhou Xian, becoming the 14th captain of the camp. There were 80,000 soldiers in the camp and his position was only a title. He didn't have an army under his command, but he didn't care. What he wanted most right now was to remodel his body and become a true cultivator. At the peak of Zhou Xian looked towards the south as the bespectacled girl approached him. Executioner, we've searched the area around Tianqing. There's nothing hidden. That person wasn't lying. Zhou Xian sighed. All right, you can go now. There's something I need to report. We found traces of battle around Tianqing covered up. This Lu Yin might not be as simple as he seems. He might be very strong, the bespectacled girl said solemnly. Zhou Xian smiled. I know. His right hand and leg were injured, but he was still able to defeat the Snow Lady. His true strength is at the peak of the realm of Earth, or else he wouldn't have been able to kill the aliens. Also, he doesn't seem to have absorbed any energy crystals. This person is very interesting. Should we monitor him? The bespectacled girl asked. Zhou Xian shook his head. No need. Humans should be as united as possible right now. Besides, even if he's hiding his strength, he's only in the realm of Earth. Understood. Within the captain's tent at Zhou Xian's camp, Lu Yin sat cross-legged on his bed and slowed his breathing. 10 minutes later he opened his eyes with clear eyes and took out a formcast model from his cosmic ring. His eyes burned with passion as he bit his index finger, causing blood to gush out. He pressed the formcast model onto his injured index finger, and it slowly melted into his fingertip before disappearing. Lu Yin waited expectantly, but a moment later, intense pain spread from his fingertip to his entire body. Lu Yin's gaze sharpened as he gritted his teeth and endured the pain. The pain surged through him like a tidal wave as if his body was being torn apart. All of his cells were being reassembled and refined, and his blood vessels squirmed on the surface of his skin. He felt as if he was being roasted by fire, crushed by an invisible hand. This was the power of a peerless powerhouse. All of his formcast models had come from such a powerhouse. At this moment Lu Yin could truly feel the greatness of this power. Lu Yin spat out a mouthful of blood, but his eyes grew brighter as he looked into the void. Countless impurities were cleansed from his body before being incinerated by energy, causing the air around him to distort. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 6. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Yin spat out another mouthful of blood. Shock waves rippled out from his body, overturning the tents for several hundred meters. The surveillance cameras outside the tent were shattered, and the trees were toppled layer by layer. The commotion attracted the attention of the camp, and two captains immediately rushed over to Lu Yin's side. One of them was Feng Hong and the other was a woman. She had a charming appearance and her eyes were filled with curiosity. The two captains appeared outside the ruins of Lu Yin's tent and peered inside. Are you the new Captain Lu Yin? Feng Hong asked loudly, and the cultivators behind him were on high alert. Lu Yin quickly walked out of the ruins, his face pale and his steps shaky. Sorry to disturb you two, but I am Lu Yin. Feng Hong and the charming woman looked at him in shock. Why are you so weak? Lu Yin smiled bitterly. I saw the executioner use a battle technique before and I was itching to try it out myself. However, I failed and ended up with some injuries. Feng Hong smiled. Brother Lu, you're too impatient. Battle techniques aren't something that just anyone can grasp, and it's not something that can be learned in a short amount of time. All captains have the opportunity to be personally taught by the executioner, so you don't have to rush. Lu Yin nodded. I understand. Thank you for your guidance, Brother Feng. Feng Hong waved his hand, not putting on the airs of an instructor at all. You're welcome, we're all brothers in the camp. We'll face the apocalypse together in the future and rely on each other. Alright, I'll have someone arrange a new place for you so you can rest and recover first. Right, do you need a doctor? No need, it's just a flesh wound. I'm just too tired, there's no need to call a doctor. Feng Hong nodded. Alright, then we'll be leaving first. Brother Lu, you should rest first. After saying that, he gave the charming woman a look. She nodded and glanced at Lu Yin one more time before leaving. Lu Yin followed the soldier to the nearest tent. "I'll take my leave first. You can call for me if you have any instructions, Commander Lu." The soldier saluted and left. Lu Yin nodded and stepped into the tent. His eyes were filled with excitement, but there was also a trace of apprehension and anticipation. Formcast had been a success, and not only had it been a success, but it had also given him a huge surprise. He raised his hand and a palm-sized die slowly floated into view, emitting hazy starlight. It had 6 sides, and like a normal die, each side represented a different point. There were a total of 6 points. This was an innate talent that could only be born after a very small number of cultivators formed their bodies. Innate talents were very mysterious. No one knew where they came from. Many scholars in the universe believed that innate talents were the deepest secrets of mankind, representing a person's ancient origins. However, this was only a guess. No one could truly research innate talents. Lu Yin didn't care about the source of the innate gift. He only cared about the innate gift itself. Before he came to Earth, he had heard countless stories about the power of innate talents. Every cultivator with innate talents was a genius and would be recruited by various forces in the universe. The most famous incident was that any cultivator with innate talents could directly join the Universe Youth Council. Lu Yin's eyes burned with passion as he looked at the die. Although his innate gift was a little strange, how should he put it? What was most important was its usefulness. He looked at the die that was floating in the void and tapped it lightly. The die spun rapidly before slowly coming to a stop, and the 6 faces began to change. The points on 5 faces immediately disappeared, leaving only 1 face with exactly 1 point. Lu Yin stared at the point, and an inexplicable use appeared in his mind. It could be used to randomly retrieve anything from anyone's cosmic ring. Before Lu Yin could react, the die shot out a beam of light into the void, disappearing in an instant as if it had opened up a passage. A moment later, a chip fell to the ground and the die dimmed before vanishing. Lu Yin stared blankly at the chip that had fallen to the ground. Was this the thing that had helped me steal? No take back? Lu Yin picked up the chip and looked at it before taking out Vesta's gadget from his cosmic ring and inserting the chip. A screen appeared in front of him with 3 large words. Serious. Lu Yin stared blankly at the flashing images of people, the universe, nebulae and palms. After a full half an hour, the chip that had been inserted into the gadget self-destructed, waking him up from his daze. Lu Yin was shaken. He knew that he had obtained something incredible. The serious art was a cultivation technique that absorbed star energy. It imitated the movements of the stars, and in theory, every time one imitated the movements of a star, the rate of star energy absorption would increase. Although this serious art was only at the elementary level, it contained a method to imitate the movements of 8 stars. In other words, as long as Lu Yin succeeded, his rate of star energy absorption would increase by 8 times. 8 times was a terrifying efficiency, and the serious art also contained a battle technique called the serious palm. It was extremely powerful, and stars would appear when the palm struck. Lu Yin put away the gadget with excitement. He had never even heard of the serious art, but it was definitely terrifying. Someone with such a powerful technique might have come from the Innerverse. Lu Yin suppressed his excitement. He hadn't expected his luck to be so heaven-defying. Logically speaking, the probability of obtaining a battle technique from a roll of pips was quite low. He wouldn't be surprised if this thing had stolen him a pair of underwear. He had actually obtained something as heaven-defying as the serious art on his first try. This technique would be enough to shape his future. Unfortunately, it was only at the elementary level. Lu Yin shook his head and laughed. He was overthinking things. This technique had to be the treasure of some powerful sect, and there was no way the entire technique would be recorded on a chip. The method of preservation was extremely strict, and the chip that had been destroyed had clearly just been recorded. It had probably been stolen from some unlucky person, and it was too difficult to obtain the entire technique. Lu Yin stopped thinking about it and walked out of the tent. He found a tree and lay down, looking up at the sky as he recalled the serious art. The movements of the stars. He would probably have to spend the rest of his life in space. At the same time, in the depths of the vast universe, a towering mountain slowly floated around dozens of stars. The top of the mountain was burning with flames that looked like cigarette butts from afar. The flames would extinguish every few seconds, only to reignite once more. Smoke soared into the sky, covering the dark universe with white ribbons. Within the mountain, a loud roar reverberated throughout the universe. What did you say? You brat, the technique disappeared? Did you give it to that bitch again? Get the hell over here. A young man escaped from the dark universe, clutching his butt in embarrassment. Dad, don't accuse me. I didn't. It really disappeared. What the hell? Brat, do you think I'm an idiot? Who dares to steal from under my nose? Get over here. No, Dad, it's really a ghost. Lu Yin didn't manage to figure out anything after an entire night, so he entered the interior of Mount Zhong tiredly. On the top floor of Mount Zhong, many people were seated in a huge meeting room, but the seat of honor was empty. When Lu Yin stepped into the meeting room, everyone looked at him with curiosity, friendliness, and doubt. There were all sorts of gazes on him. Brother Lu, sit here, Feng Hong spoke up as soon as he saw Lu Yin. Lu Yin naturally sat beside him, and on the other side was the charming woman he'd seen the night before. Diagonally across from him was the bespectacled woman he'd seen once before. Most of the people here were captains and a few researchers. Not long after, Zhou Xian walked into the meeting room and scanned the room. His gaze lingered on Lu Yin for a moment, and a trace of suspicion flashed in his eyes. He then sat down at the head of the table and smiled. Let me introduce Lu Yin, the new major. Lu Yin stood up and nodded to everyone before sitting down again. Lu Yin's introduction was just a formality. He didn't want to listen to the discussions that followed, and the meeting only ended after half an hour. Everyone left, leaving Zhou Xian alone with Lu Yin. Lu Yin, I thought you hadn't absorbed any energy crystals to cultivate and wanted to discuss it with you, but it looks like you used up all your energy yesterday, Zhou Xian probed. Lu Yin nodded. Executioner, that alien was very strong. Even though he was heavily injured, he wasn't easy to deal with. I had to use up all my energy to kill him. I can see that he's a realm of sky powerhouse. It's impressive that you were able to kill him, Zhou Xian laughed. Lu Yin smiled but didn't reply. I heard that you came to the camp yesterday but didn't agree to stay. Why? Zhou Xian asked. I like my freedom and I can't stand the atmosphere of the camp. Zhou Xian nodded and sighed. Many people think the same way. Actually, when the apocalypse comes, humans should be united. Those that can be abandoned should be abandoned. I understand, Executioner, Lu Yin replied. Zhou Xian grunted. How's your injury? It's fine, I'll recover soon. That's the good thing about being a cultivator, they have great recovery abilities. Actually, they're even more dangerous than normal people. After experiencing what it feels like to be strong, you don't want to be weak anymore. The stronger you become, the more you have to risk your life. Countless people have fallen on this path, and even I don't know when I'll die, Zhou Xian sighed. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 7. Lu Yin glanced at Zhou Xian. He was speaking the truth. The so-called 7 sages of Wuxia were just ants in the vast universe, and even a random student could reach that level. The realm of heaven was known as the Sentinel realm, but it was only the second step of cultivation. The first step was the Seeker realm, and Lu Yin was a seeker. Next was the Sentinel realm, where one studied the strength of the human body. The third step was the Melder realm, where one would become strong enough to touch the limits of the human body. The fourth step was the Limiter realm, where one could break through the limits of the human body and traverse the void. Above that were the Explorers, who could traverse the void with a wave of their hand. Explorers, on the other hand, were still unable to reach the level of being able to create formcast models. The path of cultivation was long and vast, and it was almost impossible for Zhou Xian, who used energy crystals to cultivate, to become an explorer. The stronger he became, the more insignificant he felt. Why am I telling you all this? Come, let's go take a look. Zhao, you should be fighting one of my captains by now. Zhou Xian smiled and led Lu Yin out of the meeting room. Lu Yin followed them silently, and they soon arrived at the plaza where they'd been before. Through the glass he saw a captain defeated by Zhao Yu and beaten to the ground. Zhao Yu was dressed in martial arts clothes, and her attacks were swift and decisive. Lu Yin had seen this before, and she was currently suppressing Feng Hong. Zhou Xian looked down and shook his head. There are strong and weak earth ranks as well, and the gap between them is huge. Zhao Yu didn't even use a battle technique, but she easily defeated my captains. Lu Yin looked down and said in a low voice, her battle technique is powered by a plant. Zhou Xian smiled. Of course, whether it's the Snow Lady or the Luo Sage, they need to use external objects to freeze the human body. The human body can't produce such an effect. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed, unable to produce such an effect? No, powerful battle techniques and innate gifts could change the weather, but Earth couldn't. Lu Yin's serious art could even imitate the movements of the stars, but no one would believe him even if he told them. Feng Hong was quickly defeated, and 2 more captains followed suit. No one was willing to step up. Zhao Yu raised her head and looked around. I heard that captains are all iron warriors. Why, no one wants to spar with me? The faces of Feng Hong and the others turned ugly. Above them, Zhou Xian couldn't help but laugh. The Luo Xing's 3 snow maidens are considered invincible in the earth realm. They really do have some ability. At this moment, Zhao Yu looked up and stared straight at Lu Yin. She raised her hand and crooked her finger, looking rather valiant and formidable. Feng Hong and the others looked up in surprise. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. This was a provocation. Zhou Xian smiled. Looks like she's not convinced that you defeated her yesterday. It was a draw yesterday, Lu Yin replied. Zhou Xian said, then let's go and fight. We can't embarrass our camp too much. Lu Yin nodded and turned to leave. Within the plaza, hundreds of evolvers were discussing animatedly. Many of them were looking at Zhao Yu with reverence. She was an absolute idol for a woman to be able to beat up the 10,000-man commander of the camp. Zhao Yu took a deep breath when she saw Lu Yin walk down. Her gaze was stern. She had not been convinced of yesterday's battle. She had originally held the upper hand, but she had been mysteriously defeated. She really wanted to see that battle technique again. In the distance, Feng Hong and the others watched Lu Yin slowly walk over and couldn't help but warn him, Brother Lu, be careful. This woman can use the battle technique Glacial Palm. It's very powerful. Lu Yin nodded and walked towards Zhao Yu. Please. Zhao Yu's eyes were overflowing with battle intent. She leapt up and raised her hand, drawing a dagger out of nowhere. Just like at Heaven's sinkhole, she attacked first. The dagger tore through the air, reflecting a cold glint. Lu Yin easily dodged. He was completely different from yesterday. Yesterday he was just an ordinary person with a strong body. Today he was a cultivator who had reached the realm of Seeker. Lu Yin dodged with ease, but Feng Hong and the others broke out in cold sweat. Zhao Yu's attacks were getting faster and faster, and even her dagger carried a cold aura that caused the air to turn white and the temperature to plummet. The ground of the plaza crumbled as Zhao Yu swung her dagger like a whirlwind, sealing off Lu Yin from all directions. Strands of energy shot out in all directions, piercing through the walls and making it difficult for many evolvers to breathe. Lu Yin stared intently at Zhao Yu and suddenly raised his hand. Their bodies crisscrossed past each other, and in his hand was a dagger that emitted a cold aura. No one dared to breathe as they quietly watched the battle. There Zhao Yu was stunned. Her hand was empty. Her dagger had been stolen. Feng Hong and the others were shocked, but they quickly became excited. Good job, Brother Lu. Brother Lu, you're amazing. Lu Yin turned to face Zhao Yu and casually tossed the dagger back. Do you want to continue? She stared at him. How did you do it? Lu Yin shrugged. Eyesight and hand speed I can't do without either. Nonsense, that was the only word that popped up in everyone's minds. Zhao Yu said with mixed feelings, you win. You stole my dagger without a single injury. No one in the realm of Earth should be your match. You're very strong. Lu Yin couldn't help but laugh. These people were too short-sighted. These fledgling seekers who didn't even have a proper battle technique would be at the bottom of the universe's top academies. They didn't have the right to say such things, but Zhao Yu was right. Lu Yin was confident that no one in the realm of Earth was his match. Zhao Yu dejectedly put away her dagger. Only then did she realize that Lu Yin was different from the day before. Did you run out of energy yesterday? Lu Yin didn't explain and simply turned to walk outside. He wanted to go out for a walk, but there wasn't anything in the barren mountains that he was looking for. Perhaps it was hidden somewhere else. Zhao Yu watched him leave. She wanted to ask about the battle technique from yesterday, but it was a personal matter and she couldn't bring herself to do so. Feng Hong and the others were rather surprised. They hadn't expected the new captain to be so powerful. It was rumored that he was the one who had killed the alien, which should be true. That alien was a realm of heaven powerhouse, even if it was heavily injured. Although Lu Yin didn't have any real power after becoming a captain, the camp still assigned him a team of 100 soldiers for him to use. Walking out of Zhou Xian, Lu Yin waved for a young cultivator to step forward. "Captain, please give your orders." "Do you know where Jinling's former thermal weapons warehouse is?" "Northwest," the soldier replied. Lu Yin took out a map. "Mark it for me." The soldier took out a pen and drew a circle on the map. Lu Yin took a look. "You guys can go back, I'll walk around by myself." "Captain, the arsenal was destroyed at the beginning of the apocalypse, and the remaining firearms have been moved away. If you need them, you can request them from the executioner." Lu Yin nodded. "All right, I got it. You guys can go back." With that, he walked towards the northwest alone. These soldiers had been assigned to him by the camp. On one hand, they were there for him to command, but on the other, they were there to keep an eye on him. Lu Yin didn't plan on hiding his tracks. The thing he was looking for was very well hidden, and blindly searching for it would only alert the enemy. Now that he was in the realm of Earth, he wouldn't attract too much attention and might even find it. Lu Yin's guess was right. As soon as he left, someone reported to Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed. "Arsenal? Why is he looking for that place?" The bespectacled girl walked over and pushed her glasses up. "The arsenal has been destroyed, so he shouldn't be looking for firearms. I'm not sure what he's looking for, though." "Let him be, we don't have any secrets here," Zhou Xian smiled, not minding the matter. Nanjing was centered around Zhou Xian, and the closer one got to the mountain, the safer and better the location. The city had long since lost its peacetime layout. There were people living on the streets, in the flower beds, and even in the rivers, living day after day in blind fear. On the other hand, some people were very happy, their morals collapsing as they did whatever they wanted. Along the way, Lu Yin saw many cultivators bullying the survivors, and even the soldiers couldn't stop them in time. This was the state of the world. Earth was currently in a state of confusion, but Lu Yin knew that this was evolution, and the price of one civilization evolving into another was rather high. The sky was gloomy and soon it began to rain heavily. The rain washed over the ground, spreading red blood and all sorts of rubbish. Lu Yin found a relatively clean restaurant and sat down. There were many survivors squatting outside, and every time the restaurant brought out food, there would be a mad scramble for it. Scram, 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 scram. "Remember, clean the bucket and return it, or we'll get someone else to clean it next time," the waiter scolded loudly, clearly a cultivator. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 8. Lu Yin looked at the scene and casually ordered 2 dishes. To be able to run a restaurant at a time like this meant that it had a powerful background. At the very least, no one dared to cause trouble. The guards patrolling the entrance every 2 minutes showed that they had received special treatment. "Here are your dishes, please enjoy," the waiter said as he brought the 3 dishes to Lu Yin and left without looking back. Lu Yin took a bite and frowned. It wasn't tasty, but it was much better than rat or mutant dog meat. He took out his map and looked at it as he ate. Not long after, a dozen figures entered the restaurant. The owner's eyes lit up when he saw them. "Young Master Kong, please come in. It's raining so hard outside, we'll bring you anything you want." The man called Young Master Kong grunted and sat down at a table not far from Lu Yin. He glanced at Lu Yin but didn't pay him any attention and knocked on the table. "Bring him over." A figure was thrown to the ground with a thud, breaking a chair as he trembled and looked at young Master Kong. "I'm sorry, young Master Kong, I didn't know that was yours. If I had known, I wouldn't have dared to steal it. I'm sorry, young Master Kong, please spare me." Young Master Kong sneered. "Spare you? Then how am I supposed to take my brothers? Don't you know that I gave it to my uncle? Now that you've lost one, I'll give you 2 choices. Either give me 30 energy crystals or die." The figure despaired. "Young Master Kong, I really didn't know that was yours. Please let me go, I'm willing to be your dog." Young Master Kong slammed the table and took out a gun, pointing it at the figure's head. "No energy crystals? Goodbye." The figure's pupils shrank as he screamed in despair. Suddenly, he saw Lu Yin nearby and pointed at him. I gave it to him." Everyone turned to look at Lu Yin. Lu Yin put down his cup and didn't say anything. He had seen the person being beaten up the moment he walked in. It was the shifty-eyed cultivator who had sold him the map. When he had bought the map for 3 energy crystals, the guy had also given him an aphrodisiac. Lu Yin had found it strange at the time as aphrodisiacs were very expensive. Now it seemed that he had stolen it from this young Master Kong. Young Master Kong stared at Lu Yin for a while before kicking the shifty-eyed cultivator. "How dare you trick me, Su San? You found a random person to fool me." Su San shouted, "It's him, he bought the map from me. Look, I sold it to him, there's a mark on the bottom right corner." Young Master Kong and the rest looked over. Lu Yin, young Master Kong and the others. Young Master Kong, young Master Kong, young Master Kong, young Master Kong, young Master Kong. "Scram," Lu Yin replied indifferently. Young Master Kang's expression changed. The evolvers around him were furious. What a temper. Do you know what young Master Kong represents in Jinling Colony? To young Lu Yin to grab Lu Tu. Lu Yin casually shot out a pair of chopsticks, which pierced through the arms of several cultivators before nailing them to the wall. The wall immediately cracked open and at the same time, blood splattered onto the table. And the restaurant owner was shocked and quickly hid. Young Master Kong pointed his gun at Lu Yin. "My uncle is a captain of the camp, don't do anything rash. Hand it over and we can talk." "Throw it away," Lu Yin said. Young Master Kong didn't believe him. "I'll say it again, hand it over or I'll let you know what despair is. You can't afford to offend an Earth Realm powerhouse." Lu Yin was suddenly curious. If your uncle is an Earth Realm powerhouse, why would he want an aphrodisiac? Young Master Kang's face twitched in anger. "How dare you slander my uncle? You're looking to die. 5. Contact my uncle immediately." He wasn't stupid and knew that guns couldn't deal with Lu Yin. Lu Yin's sharp gaze swept over Su San, who was beaten half to death. He'd been wrong. Young Master Kong didn't want an aphrodisiac but something else. Su San immediately lowered his head when he saw Lu Yin's gaze, not daring to look at him. Lu Yin smiled but he didn't mind. It didn't matter to him whether or not he was a scapegoat. What he was curious about was what had caught the captain's attention. Earth's evolution had given birth to many good things, and this was one of the reasons why so many academies across the universe had come here to train. Not long after, a middle-aged man walked into the restaurant and waved his hand to disperse the soldiers before looking inside. "Uncle, you're here." Young Master Kong was delighted and raised his gun even higher. Lu Yin looked over and saw a familiar face. It was one of the captains that Zhao Yu had defeated, Kong Dafeng. Kong Dafeng nodded. "Did you find it?" "Yes, that brat took it," young Master Kong said fiercely, pointing at Lu Yin. Kong Dafeng followed young Master Kang's gaze and his expression changed when he saw Lu Yin. The two had just met and Snow Lady Zhao Yu's strength was still fresh in his mind. However, she hadn't even been able to retaliate against Lu Yin, which made Kong Dafeng very envious. He had been thinking about how to learn a few moves from Lu Yin, but he hadn't expected to meet him here. "Ah, it's Brother Lu." Kong Dafeng walked up to Lu Yin and smiled politely. Lu Yin smiled faintly. "What a coincidence, Brother Kong. Are you here for a meal?" Kong Dafeng replied, "This restaurant is owned by Brother Li and we often gather here. I apologize for today's incident and I hope you won't blame my nephew. He's still young and doesn't know any better." Everyone stared blankly at the scene. What was this? Had he bumped into someone hard to deal with? Lu Yin smiled. "It's nothing, just a joke." Kong Dafeng immediately glared at young Master Kong. "Why aren't you apologizing to Brother Lu?" Young Master Kong wasn't stupid and he quickly put on a smile and bowed respectfully. "It's my fault for not recognizing you. Please don't blame me, Commander Lu." Lu Yin waved a hand. "It's fine." Kong Dafeng waved for young Master Kong and the rest to leave before exchanging a few more words with Lu Yin. This wasn't a good time to say too much, but Lu Yin did ask Su San to stay before he left. After Kong Dafeng and the rest left, the restaurant owner personally refilled Lu Yin's glass of water and served him a few exquisite dishes, saying that they were free. Outside the restaurant, young Master Kong was puzzled. "Uncle, why were you so polite to that person? Is he a major too?" Kong Dafeng whispered, "Remember to be polite when you meet him in the future. He's very strong." "Aren't you a major too, uncle? How strong can he be?" Young Master Kong grumbled. Kong Dafeng glared at him. Shut up, I'll tell you that this person is several times stronger than me. Outside of the executioner, no one in Nanjing can beat him. Perhaps even the strongest Major Li Hongliang isn't his match. Young Master Kang's mouth fell open, and he looked back at the restaurant in a daze before quickly running away. He knew that he had narrowly escaped death today. Inside the restaurant, Lu Yin stared coldly at Zhou Xian. You've got guts to accuse me. Zhou Xian felt that he was very unlucky. Not only had he stolen from Kong Dafeng, he'd also wronged someone who was even more powerful than him. Even a major had to be polite to him. He felt like he was crippled and even the heavens had abandoned him. What did Kong Dafeng want? Lu Yin asked casually. A type of red crystal, I sold it, Zhou Xian said bitterly as he slumped to the ground. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Red crystal? Isn't it a little hot? Zhou Xian was shocked. How did you know? Lu Yin knew what it was. A fire crystal, a type of crystal that sealed the energy of fire. Touching it would ignite flames and many fire-type battle techniques required it. Its effect was similar to Zhao Yu's glacial palm, and it was considered a foreign object for battle techniques. It was hard currency in the universe and naturally even more precious on Earth. It was no wonder that Kong Dafeng had been so nervous about it. Do you know where it comes from? Lu Yin asked. Zhou Xian shook his head. No. Lu Yin laughed. So you're saying that you've wrongly accused me and made an enemy out of nothing, but in the end I won't get any benefits? Is that what you're trying to say? Zhou Xian's face paled and he could only apologize. I'm sorry. Lu Yin toyed with his chopsticks. Do you think this chopstick can pierce your throat? Let's try. Zhou Xian's eyes were filled with fear. He hadn't forgotten how the other cultivators had been shot in the arms. He begged for mercy, his head swollen from kowtowing. Lu Yin shook his head. He was just trying to scare him. Sometimes it wasn't good to be too tense during the apocalypse. He took a sip of water and prepared to leave. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 9. Zhou Xian saw Lu Yin stand up and thought that he was about to attack him. Life was worthless in the apocalypse, and he had no doubt that Lu Yin would kill him to vent his anger. Sir, I can help you with many things, please don't kill me. Lu Yin walked out of the restaurant, ignoring the man. When Lu Yin passed by Zhou Xian's side, the cultivator's fear reached its peak. He thought that he was about to be killed. He had seen too many powerhouses slaughter others. He gritted his teeth and said, Sir, I have a special ability that can help you. Lu Yin stopped abruptly and looked over in surprise. What did you say? A special ability? Zhou Xian's face went pale. My eyes can see very far, many times farther than a normal person's. That's how I was able to steal so many good things. Lu Yin squatted down and stared into Zhou Xian's eyes, only to see that the man's pupils were slightly dilated. Dual pupils? Lu Yin was truly shocked. This was an innate gift that only one out of countless cultivators in the universe was born with. Does anyone else know about your special ability? Lu Yin frowned. Zhou Xian shook his head. I don't want people to think I'm a monster, so I didn't tell anyone. You're the first. Lu Yin's lips curled up. Name. Zhou Xian. All right. Zhou Xian, you'll follow me from today onwards. I'll take you to the camp, Lu Yin said. Zhou Xian looked up in fear. Are you going to dissect me? Lu Yin laughed. I won't, but others might. You can't expose your special ability, got it? Zhou Xian nodded, confused. Those who had never stepped foot in the heavens would never understand the importance of innate gifts. The Universe Youth Council was willing to directly allow cultivators with innate gifts to join, something that countless people could only dream of. To Lu Yin, Zhou Xian was a treasure that would be very useful in the future. Even if he sold him, he would be worth a lot of money. Zhou Xian was a local, and under his guidance, Lu Yin ran all over Nanjing in a few days, including the destroyed armory. However, he didn't find a single clue about what he was looking for. Boss, this is the highest peak in Nanjing, second only to Zhou Xian, Zhou Xian told Lu Yin. Lu Yin grunted. Let's see where the military is more concentrated, aside from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian nodded his head. As he looked into the distance, his pupils dilated and became brighter. After a while, Zhou Xian smiled bitterly and said, Boss, I can see further than normal people, but I can't see all of Jinling clearly. You can always improve if you practice more. Zhou Xian was speechless. His eyes widened as he watched. Boss, do you see someone flying over from the horizon? Zhou Xian suddenly shouted, pointing to the eastern sky. Lu Yin looked up in surprise. There really was someone flying over, and this person was definitely not from Earth. Just like Vesta, he had come from outer space. The newcomer's flying speed was extremely fast. He directly landed in the air above Jinling. He took a deep breath and let out a loud roar. Violent energy instantly swept through Jinling like a storm. At the same time, an alarm sounded in the Jinling colony. Countless people raised their heads and looked at the figure in the sky in shock. In Zhou Xian, Feng Hong and the other captains rushed out and looked at the sky with pale faces. Tian realm? Countless people stared blankly at the sky. Being able to fly was the mark of a sky realm powerhouse. Since when did China have a sky realm powerhouse? Orton looked down at Jinling from high up in the sky with an arrogant gaze. Just like Vesta, everyone from outer space viewed Earthlings as barbarians. Esteemed sky realm powerhouse, why are you attacking Jinling? This place is under the protection of the executioner. A voice came from within Zhou Xian. Although it was a question, the tone was respectful. Orton sneered. Executioner? Is that what you natives call yourselves? How bold, do you think the word, saint, is something you can use? Tell your so-called executioner to come out. The millions of people in the Jinling colony were terrified. The unfamiliar heaven rank brought about a strong sense of hostility. This was an enemy. Feng Hong and the rest had ugly expressions. Others might not know, but they knew that this newcomer was definitely an alien. Just like the person who had been killed a few days ago, he was also a sky realm powerhouse. Jinling was in trouble. With a shout, Zhou Xian raised his 3-meter-long axe and soared into the sky. He faced Orton with a serious expression. I am the executioner, Zhou Xian. Countless people cheered. Zhou Xian was the protector of Jinling. Orton arrogantly replied, I'm sure you've already guessed who I am. I'll give you a chance to serve me. In the future, I might be able to take you out of Earth and into the stars. Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed. I don't know who you are. Orton sneered. A mere native dares to play tricks with me? Vesta landed in this area. Don't tell me you've never seen him before. Let me tell you, my ranking is much higher than his. You'll have a better future if you follow me. Zhou Xian tightened his grip on his axe. We're Earthlings, not natives. Orton's lips curled up. Looks like you're still not convinced. I'll show you the difference between us natives and them. With that, a sword suddenly appeared and stabbed towards Zhou Xian. No one had expected Orton to attack without any warning, not even Zhou Xian. However, Zhou Xian's reaction was very fast, and his battle experience was extremely rich. He raised the handle of the huge axe to deflect the long sword, and took advantage of the momentum to make a 360-degree turn from bottom to top. Orton was shocked. What a fast reaction. He couldn't help but pay more attention to Zhou Xian. His long sword surged and blocked the attack of the huge axe, but his body was knocked back 100 meters and his hands were numb. The shockwave from the collision of sword and axe slashed into the colony, creating a 100-meter-long crack in the ground. Many people were caught in the shockwave and fled in fear. What strength! Orton was shocked. Zhou Xian swung his axe at Orton. Orton sneered. Energy surged out from his body as he blocked with his sword, firmly blocking Zhou Xian's axe. Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed as he attacked again. You want to push me out of this colony? Whatever, I'll convince you. With that, Orton's sword and axe clashed once more. His body was pushed back by the huge force and he was sent flying out of the colony. Although the exchange had been brief, it had shocked countless people. Humans could actually fight in the air and every move was powerful enough to split the ground. This was the power of a god. Feng Hong and the rest were worried. The aliens had dared to land on Earth, so they must have made preparations. On another mountain peak, Zhou Xian was trembling. This was the first time he had seen a battle between realm of sky powerhouses, and it was an eye-opener. Lu Yin looked outside the city and frowned as he heard the faint rumbling sounds. Every descending student had a ring armor that could defend against a realm of sky powerhouses' attacks. This made Orton invincible, but Zhou Xian was one of China's 7 sages. These 7 had definitely obtained the inheritance of the corpse on Neptune, And even if it wasn't much, Orton couldn't underestimate them. The fact that they could stand on Neptune meant that the corpse had the power of an explorer. Such people had unfathomable foundations. He could underestimate all of Earth's cultivators, but not the 7 sages of China. They had been cultivating since before the apocalypse. Zhou Xian hadn't been too surprised when he'd seen Vesta's corpse and the spacecraft a few days ago. Lu Yin had observed the scene carefully, and Orton might not have won. Not long after, a deafening rumble came from outside the city. Countless shockwaves shot into the sky and tore through the clouds before everything returned to normal. Zhou Xian quickly flew into the sky. Although he looked a little pale, he wasn't injured. He raised his axe high, and the millions of survivors in Nanjing cheered him on. "Stay here," he ordered before rushing out of the city. The battle between Zhou Xian and Orton wasn't far, only about 20 kilometers outside the city. By the time Lu Yin arrived, he was greeted by the sight of ruins and burning skyscrapers. Slash marks were clearly visible on the ground, extending into the distance. The zombies and mutant beasts in the area had long since fled or turned to dust. Lu Yin squatted down and touched the marks. There were still traces of sharp energy on them. This was the power of Zhou Xian's battle technique. He hadn't even used his full strength to kill the mutant vines that day. Not far away, a white fragment reflected light. He picked it up and narrowed his eyes. It was a fragment of Orton's ring armor. Orton had been defeated miserably, and even his ring armor had been shattered. He didn't know if Orton was still alive, but he probably wasn't. Otherwise, Zhou Xian would have brought his corpse back to Nanjing. Lu Yin reassessed the strength of the 7 sages. He didn't know how strong the 3 high sages were, but Zhou Xian might have the power of a peak sentinel. The fact that he could shatter the ring armor was proof. A commotion came from the distance. The other captains had probably arrived. Lu Yin didn't want to meet them, so he left immediately. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 10. That night in Zhongshan, Susan was sent away. Lu Yin returned to the tree outside his tent and looked up at the sky. The apocalypse had cleansed the Earth's air, allowing him to see more stars. He had been practicing the cosmic art for the past few days, but it wasn't easy to imitate the movements of the stars. He hadn't had the slightest clue before, but today he had touched Zhou Xian's slash mark and faintly sensed the strength of his battle with Orton. His heart was stirred and he stared intently at the night sky. As time passed, the noise in his ears gradually faded away, and the stars in his vision disappeared as well, leaving only the moon shining brightly. This beam of light illuminated the night sky as well as Lu Yin, making it so that nothing else could be seen. Lu Yin subconsciously raised his hand, causing ripples in the air as energy was absorbed into his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. A hazy star twinkled in his palm. It was the moon, and it revolved around his palm. This was the Sirius palm. Lu Yin's body swayed as he came to his senses. He stared at the star in his palm in shock. At that moment he could feel how terrifying the power of this star was. Even though there was no comparison, Lu Yin had a feeling that this palm strike of his could shock even Zhou Xian. Lu Yin dispersed the star and felt the vigorous star energy in his body. This was the energy he'd absorbed, and it wasn't limited by energy crystals. He could absorb it anytime, anywhere, and twice as fast as Vesta and the others. This was the Sirius art. He'd finally mastered it. The moment Lu Yin dispersed the star in his palm, Zhou Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He felt his heart palpitate for a moment, but then he couldn't feel anything. Was it an illusion? Today's battle was too tiring. The next day, Lu Yin received news that the executioner had personally ordered him to reinforce the northern front lines. The northern front lines were the battlefield that led from Nanjing to the capital. Zhou Xian had always wanted to connect Nanjing to the capital, then connect with the other sages to reclaim China. It was a good idea, but it was too difficult. Just a small path had taken several months, and not even a tenth of the journey had been completed. The front lines were very important to Zhou Xian, and no matter how difficult it was, his focus was always on them. Nearly half of the 14 captains were there, showing his determination to connect to the capital. This time Lu Yin, Kong Dafeng and Luo Yi were heading to the front lines. Luo Yi was the charming major, and she had always been curious about Lu Yin. Lu Yin led 10,000 soldiers out of Jinlin and headed north. Rather than saying that we're supporting the front lines, it's more accurate to say that we're repairing the roads, Luo Yi said tiredly. Tens of thousands of troops had already walked for a day and rarely rested. No wonder Luo Yun complained. The journey was bumpy and the car had to be repaired from time to time. Plus, the road was paved so the speed was not fast. In another armored vehicle, Lu Yin was resting with his eyes closed, occasionally looking up at the blinding sunlight. He wondered if he could simulate the sun's orbit. If he succeeded, his star energy absorption rate would double, and he felt like he wasn't far from the Sentinel realm. However, it wasn't easy to simulate the sun. Perhaps he should start from Earth. He didn't have to look at the starry sky. He could also look for pictures of the galaxy in peacetime. Simulating the movements of the stars was to find a way to conform to the movements of the universe, and Lu Yin wanted to continuously experiment. They passed by a city with flames burning on both sides of the road. Zombies roamed the streets and attacked the convoy from time to time, but they were wiped out by the army's firearms. Restrain yourselves, we only have so many bullets, Kong Dafeng scolded, and the frequency of gunfire decreased significantly. Zhou Xian sneered in the armored vehicle. The longer the apocalypse, the less effective firearms will be. If we don't use them now, when will we? After a while, they'll be nothing more than scrap metal. Lu Yin looked out the window and saw more and more zombies gathering. He frowned. Tell the others to speed up. Don't waste time getting surrounded by zombies in the city. Yes, boss, Zhou Xian replied and walked out of the armored vehicle. The convoy quickly picked up speed. Lu Yin had defeated Zhao Yu and his status was high among the majors. Kong Dafeng and Luo Yi didn't dare to refute him. Speaking of Zhao Yu, Lu Yin admired her from the bottom of his heart. She had actually dared to cross the Hell Domain alone and arrive at Nanjing safely. Not long after, the convoy stopped. The road ahead had been destroyed and was being repaired. Lu Yin closed his eyes and tapped the void with his fingers, occasionally rotating them to imitate the orbits of the stars. Suddenly there was a shout as Kong Dafeng attacked, cursing and killing zombies. Lu Yin glanced at him impatiently, but didn't pay him any attention. Zhou Xian praised. As expected of a major, those zombies were scared away. Tell Kong Dafeng to come back and continue forward. There are too many zombies to kill, Lu Yin said coldly. Zhou Xian nodded and was about to get out again when he helplessly turned back. Boss, Kong Dafeng chased the zombies into that abandoned building. Lu Yin looked up and stared for a while before getting out of the car with a solemn expression. What's wrong, boss? Zhou Xian asked. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes. There's no sound. Zhou Xian thought about it. Yeah, there's no sound of fighting. Brother Lu, where did Kong Dafeng go? Luo Yi asked. You guys stay here, I'll go take a look, Lu Yin said in a low voice, pulling out his iron rod and walking towards the building. Vesta's knife was still in Nanjing, and Lu Yin didn't expect the camp to return it to him. He rejected Zhou Xian's offer of a steel knife in favor of an iron rod. Flames burned outside the building, making it look eerie even under the sun. Lu Yin slowly entered the building and saw Kong Dafeng's knife, but the man himself was nowhere to be seen. Lu Yin stepped into the building and took out Vesta's gadget from his cosmic ring, tapping it a few times to calculate his power level. An arrow pointed to the right and a number appeared. 900. Lu Yin dodged to the side, the white thread piercing through the air and slamming into the wall, creating a huge crack. Lu Yin looked over and saw a giant mutant spider with 6 pairs of terrifying crimson eyes and a blood-stained piece of cloth at the corner of its mouth. Lu Yin sighed. Kong Dafeng was dead, eaten by this mutant spider. He had come too late. The mutant spider had a power level of 900, equivalent to a peak Earth Realm being. Kong Dafeng had only just reached Earth Realm, so he naturally wasn't its match. Lu Yin gripped his iron rod tightly and rushed forward, sweeping it horizontally. The mutant spider tried to jump up on all 8 legs to dodge, but the next moment he disappeared and reappeared behind it. He swung his rod downwards, slicing through the mutant spider's body and causing Kong Dafeng's undigested body to fall out of its stomach. Lu Yin frowned at the disgusting scene and turned to leave. When he returned to the convoy, Lu Yin had Zhou Xian announce that no one was allowed to leave without permission. Kong Dafeng is really dead? Luo Yi was shocked. You can go take a look at the building, the body hasn't been digested yet, Lu Yin replied calmly. Luo Yi's face paled. A mighty captain had died just like that without even a sound. If not for Lu Yin, Kong Dafeng would have been digested by the spider. This was the cruel end of the world. Even captains wouldn't have been able to protect themselves. Zhou Xian paled as well and immediately boarded his car, determined not to leave Lu Yin's side even if he died. Luo Yi also boarded Lu Yin's car, not intending to leave. Lu Yin was speechless. It'll be fine as long as you don't leave the convoy. Luo Yi rolled her eyes. Easy for you to say. Who knows what other mutant creatures are out there? It's safer here with you. Lu Yin ignored her and ordered the convoy to continue forward. Boss, should we report this to Nanjing? A captain's death is no small matter, Zhou Xian asked. No rush, we'll wait until we reach the front lines. We might not even make it there alive. Zhou Xian's face paled even further when he heard this. Luo Yi licked her lips and subconsciously moved closer to Lu Yin. It's not that bad, we should be able to reach the front lines safely, Zhou Xian consoled himself. Lu Yin looked out the window and watched the convoy slowly move forward. But then again, Kong Dafeng was really unlucky. He actually chased the spider all the way to that building, or else he wouldn't have died, Zhou Xian muttered to himself, feeling safer only by talking more. His words caused Lu Yin's head to jerk up. What did you say? Say it again? Zhou Xian was stunned. I said that Kong Dafeng was really unlucky. He actually chased the spider all the way to that building or else he wouldn't have died. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Chasing zombies building. No, zombies didn't have consciousness, but they had instincts to avoid danger. That spider was clearly very dangerous and zombies shouldn't have gotten close to it, but it had still fled into that building. Lu Yin had experienced many dangers in the past 6 months of the apocalypse and understood zombies well. Even if they were afraid of Kong Dafeng, they wouldn't have fled to a more dangerous creature. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 11. Was this a trap? Lu Yin narrowed his eyes, hoping that he was overthinking things. After the incident with Kong Dafeng, everyone was even more tense. A day later, the convoy stopped beside an abandoned toll station. Their mission had begun. The line had been damaged and needed to be repaired. Reporting, there's a battle 5 li away. 5 evolvers have been besieged by mutant beasts, a soldier reported. Lu Yin ordered reinforcements. Half an hour later, the 5 cultivators were brought over. They were all men and they were all in a sorry state. Their clothes were tattered and they looked hungry. Lu Yin didn't get anyone to give them food. If they dared to hunt mutant beasts alone, they had to be prepared for death. He wasn't a saint and the army's food wasn't free either. If worse came to worst, they could eat the mutant rats that littered the ground. The 5 cultivators were isolated outside the toll station, and they looked on greedily as the army opened fire. Not long after, one of them asked to see Lu Yin. Lu Yin stood on the roof of the toll station and looked around. Below, the cultivator's face was ashen. Sir, can you give us some food? We can exchange information for it. Lu Yin looked at the cultivator. Speak. Will you give us food if I tell you? The cultivator asked expectantly. Are you bargaining with me? Lu Yin asked coldly. The evolver's expression changed and he said in fear, I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. He continued, actually we brought enough food, but it was stolen yesterday by a Tian realm warrior in silver armor. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Continue. The posthuman swallowed his saliva. His throat was dry but he continued, the executioner Zhou Xian is the only Tian ranker in the vicinity of Jinling, but he can fly. I guess it's because of his armor. After he stole our food he wanted to kill us to silence us, but he kept talking to himself like a lunatic and flew towards the east excitedly. Lu Yin knew that these people had run into Orton. Talking to himself? It should have been through his gadget. Could he have contacted the other students who had landed? This wasn't good. It was already difficult for Zhou Xian to defeat Orton. If the other students joined in, he might not be able to hold on. Give them some food, Lu Yin ordered, sitting down and looking up at the sky. What was he worried about? Nanjing? Or the survivors? After all, he was an outsider, not a native of Earth. To put it bluntly, he was just like Vesta and the others. But after living on Earth for so long, he gradually accepted his new identity. He only had 2.5 years of memories. His previous memories were blank. Most of his 2.5 years of memories were of Earth. Earth could be considered his home. Lu Yin took a deep breath. It was a pity that he wasn't an absolute powerhouse and couldn't save Earth. However, he could still save a few people within his capabilities. He connected to Zhou Xian's communicator and told him about his speculations about Orton. Zhou Xian replied solemnly, "I understand. Repair the circuit as soon as possible. I want to know how the others are doing. Those students aren't simple." Lu Yin hung up. The others? The other 6 sages? I hope Lu Xiaoge doesn't die. Otherwise, who am I supposed to take revenge on? Lu Yin muttered to himself. Tonight, the sky was covered by dark clouds and there was no starlight. Disappointed, Lu Yin slept in the armored vehicle. In the middle of the night, a cry of surprise woke everyone up. "Boss, a zombie wave! A zombie wave!" Zhou Xian shouted anxiously. Lu Yin walked out of the armored vehicle and jumped onto the roof of the toll station to take a look. Countless wandering zombies were closing in from all directions on the dark ground. "Everyone activate your defenses. Ignite your flames and throw them out," Luo Yi shouted. Not long after, the zombie wave began to attack the toll station. The ground was set ablaze as countless flaming objects smashed into the ground. The flames burned and the heat waves covered the sky. "Be careful. Don't let the flames near the toll station or you'll all be burned," Luo Yi shouted. Machine guns fired in all directions, the originally silent night filled with deafening sounds. Nearly 10,000 soldiers massacred the zombies at the outermost perimeter. Only their steel swords were left. From time to time, a soldier would be scratched or dragged into the zombie horde, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The 5 rescued cultivators looked around in shock. This was a military battle and it was far more tragic than they had imagined. Luo Yi brandished her steel knife. An Earth-rank warrior was not something a normal evolver could compare to. With one swing of her knife, the sharp Qijin was enough to tear apart dozens of zombies. Although she was timid, she was still very brave in battle. Lu Yin also brandished his iron rod and rushed into the zombie horde, wiping out a large number of zombies with each swing. The best way to deal with this kind of zombie wave was to use firearms. Unfortunately, there were too few of them left in Nanjing. If the arsenals hadn't been destroyed, there wouldn't have been enough to kill all the zombies with missiles. As Lu Yin slaughtered the zombies, a panicked voice came from the walkie-talkie at his waist. "Boss, the southwest area is about to collapse." Lu Yin was shocked and jumped up, stepping on the heads of zombies as he rushed towards the southwest. Sure enough, countless soldiers were being massacred there. What was going on? "Boss, there's a strange zombie that's very powerful. Even the human class captains can't handle it," Zhou Xian reported. Lu Yin landed on the ground and aimed at the intersection between the soldiers and zombies. He viciously swung his iron rod down, a visible slash cutting through the air and tearing the earth apart. He killed dozens of zombies at the same time, creating a clear dividing line in the ground. Within the dividing line, countless soldiers retreated and looked ahead in fear. More than 50 of them had died just then. With a bang, the iron rod in Lu Yin's hand broke in half. As Lu Yin's strength increased, the iron rod naturally couldn't withstand a single blow from him. "Be careful, Captain," someone cried out. A tide of zombies surged in from all directions, their numbers uncountable. There were at least 100,000 of them and they covered the mountains and plains. Lu Yin circulated his serious art, his star energy forming a shockwave that shook everything within a 10-meter radius. All the zombies were pushed back and only one long-haired zombie was able to withstand the shockwave. It stood firmly on the ground and stared at Lu Yin. "Boss, it's him. He killed a lot of soldiers," Zhou Xian's voice sounded from the walkie-talkie. Lu Yin looked at the zombie in front of him in shock. This was no ordinary zombie, it was intelligent. It was almost impossible for a zombie to gain intelligence, but it had indeed happened. Lu Yin stared at the zombie that was less than 2 meters away from him in shock. Its scarlet eyes didn't give him the impression that it was in a daze, but rather that it was in deep thought. Before Lu Yin could think any further, the long-haired zombie charged forward and clawed at Lu Yin with its claws. Lu Yin dodged, but the wind from its claws tore apart the zombies 10 meters away. It was a realm of earth and far stronger than Kong Dafeng and Luo Yi. It was on par with Xiao Yu. Lu Yin stared closely at the long-haired zombie's attack trajectory. Although it was chaotic, it was airtight. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that he was being attacked by a zombie. After several fruitless attacks, the long-haired zombie growled and turned to flee. Lu Ying stared at the white threads on the zombie's back. What's this? Spider silk? Suddenly, Lu Ying thought of the possibility that he had guessed earlier in the day. This zombie had lured Kong Dafeng to the building, so it definitely had intelligence. Lu Ying didn't have time to think. He threw out the broken half of his iron rod and pierced it through the air into the zombie's abdomen. The zombie roared and turned back to glare at Lu Ying before fleeing towards the south. The surrounding zombies suddenly roared as if provoked, blocking Lu Ying's path. Lu Ying shouted, "Susan, tell me where that zombie is." Susan's voice came from the walkie-talkie. "Boss." It turned 100 meters away and fled towards the west. "That's the way we came." Lu Ying exerted strength in his legs and disappeared, leaving behind only an afterimage that was swallowed up by the countless zombies. Susan looked on in shock. Was this a battle technique? It was too amazing. Lu Ying rushed out of the zombie horde at full speed and chased down the path they had come from, but there was no trace of the long-haired zombie. "Boss, I can't see it," Susan said. Lu Ying stopped in place and turned his back to the toll booth. He took out his gadget and tested his power level. The screen kept flashing, and the closest ones were all from the surrounding mutant beasts. However, there was one that was very strong with a power level of 990. It was definitely the long-haired zombie. Lu Ying chased after the long-haired zombie. As long as he dealt with it, the zombie horde would end. If he guessed correctly, it was the zombie king who had commanded the zombie horde to surround them. It was also the zombie king who wanted to get rid of Lu Yin's army. Kong Dafeng was the first. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 12. Lu Ying didn't know how wide Vesta's gadget's detection range was, but it should be able to cover an area of 5 kilometers. Lu Ying followed the directions and gradually left the toll station. With the long-haired zombie's departure, the agitated corpse tide slowly calmed down, returning to its aimless wandering state. Susan and the rest breathed a sigh of relief. The smelly ditch meandered into the distance, green eyes occasionally appearing from the grass before disappearing. Lu Ying walked through the grass, glancing at his gadget from time to time. This was the location indicated. If he didn't get rid of the long-haired zombie, Nanjing's army would be in great danger in the future. A zombie king with intelligence could even bring disaster to the city. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound of chewing resounded in his ears. He followed the source of the sound and looked down at the bottom of the ditch, where a dark red light flickered. The dark clouds in the sky were scattered, and the moonlight shone down, illuminating a red glow that was accompanied by 2 scarlet eyes. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Fire crystals? Was this zombie king eating fire crystals? Or? With a roar, the long-haired zombie leapt high into the air and clawed at Lu Ying. Its arm was dark red and emitted a scorching aura. Lu Ying dodged in surprise, but the grass was torn apart by the zombie king's attack and a burnt smell filled the air. The next moment, several fire crystals fell from the zombie king's body and smashed into the grass, igniting a blaze that illuminated the land. Lu Ying used the roving step to circle behind the zombie king, pulling out the iron rod that was still stuck in its back and stabbing it viciously into its brain. The zombie king remained motionless for a moment before its body trembled and slowly collapsed. Dark red flames surged out of its body, devouring it from the inside out. Lu Ying hadn't expected the zombie king to be able to obtain an innate gift by eating all sorts of energy crystals. It was extremely rare for a human to obtain an innate gift, but the zombie king could eat it. Just who was the product of evolution? Lu Ying was at a loss. The zombie king was quickly incinerated, and the surrounding flames gradually extinguished. Lu Ying walked over to where the zombie king had eaten the fire crystals and found a hole. He turned on the light and saw a dark red. What's this? A fire crystal mine? Lu Ying was shocked but then excited. Energy crystals were very popular in the universe. Whether they were pure star crystals, fire crystals, or water crystals, they were all very valuable. He hadn't expected to find a fire crystal mine here. Although he didn't know how much there was, it was definitely a treasure trove. Lu Ying was rather excited as he had never thought that killing a corpse king would result in such a harvest. As he thought about it, he took some of the stones and covered up the hole again. He also made some preparations to ensure that no one would discover it. This place was a treasure just like Zhou Xian's, and it was a capital that Lu Yin was saving for the future. Just as Lu Yin was about to leave, something dark red appeared beneath his feet. He crouched down and brushed aside the dirt to find a scarlet vertical eye. It wasn't a real eye, but rather a scarlet vertical eye that had been forged from a strange material. Lu Yin picked up the eye and felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around to see a sinister skull staring straight at him. His scalp went numb the moment he saw the skull, and he subconsciously wanted to throw it away. But in the end he didn't do so and instead stored it in his cosmic ring. It was only after Lu Yin put it away that he came back to his senses. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Just what was that? Why are you here? It was obviously a man-made product. Had someone been here before? Lu Yin felt that he had picked up an incredible item that could cause him to shiver in his current state. He exhaled and quickly left. After returning to the toll station, he found that the corpse tide had receded a lot, and there were still many more. It took an hour for all the corpses to recede. Corpses piled up outside the toll station, emitting a foul stench that attracted many mutated rats to nibble on them. "Brother Lu, where have you been?" Luo Yi immediately scolded him. "I found an intelligent zombie king. It's the one that attracted the corpse tide." "What? For real?" Luo Yi was shocked. Lu Yin continued, "Report this to the executioner right away. The appearance of a zombie king means that it's no longer just a matter of numbers that can give birth to powerhouses. At least 50 of our soldiers died at its hands tonight." Luo Yi knew the severity of the situation and immediately reported it to her superiors. "How are you, boss?" Susan asked. He wasn't worried about Lu Yin, but without him he had no status in the camp. "Take care of the rest, I'm going to rest." "Got it, boss," Susan replied. The corpse tide had killed nearly 100 people. It seemed cruel, but everyone was already numb to it. No one knew how many people had died since the apocalypse, and the soldiers were used to having their comrades change out one after another. Lying on the roof of the toll station, Lu Yin couldn't help but touch his cosmic ring. The vertical eye inside made him uneasy. The material and the feeling it gave off definitely wasn't from Earth. Did the students bring it here? What kind of student would bring something like that? Luo Yi leapt onto the roof, her charming face filled with exhaustion as she sat down beside Lu Yin. "The executioner wants us to contact the front lines as soon as possible. It would be best if we could contact the capital and report this to them." Lu Yin laughed. "The capital? Maybe they already knew about it." "Why do you say that?" Luo Yi asked in surprise. Lu Yin shook his head. "I don't know, it's just a guess. If a zombie king can appear in Nanjing, it can appear in other places as well." Luo Yi hugged her knees and stared blankly into the distance. The night sky seemed bottomless, and when she looked up, only the moonlight illuminated the sky, but it was quickly covered by dark clouds. "When do you think Earth will be peaceful again?" Luo Yi muttered. Lu Yin didn't answer. The night was lonely, and Luo Yi was completely different from the Luo Yi during the day. But so what? The apocalypse wouldn't end just because one person was afraid. The planet's evolution would take a long time, and the trial had only just begun. Only he, or perhaps the 7 sages, knew that the students were the ones who would decide Earth's fate in the future. Vesta and Orton were just students from ordinary academies in the Great Yu Empire. They might be elites, but they wouldn't be considered elites in the real top academies. Elites from the top academies all had powerful battle techniques that these students couldn't compare to. They were the main characters of this so-called trial. Thinking of this, Lu Yin touched his cosmic ring and looked at Luo Yi. "Go rest, I'll be on duty tonight." She nodded and smiled at him. "Actually, if you had consoled me just now, maybe something would have happened between us." Lu Yin smiled, not minding her. He didn't like her. Luo Yi left the roof, and the soldiers around her packed up numbly while Susan shouted from a distance. Lu Yin took out Vesta's gadget and opened it. Even though he'd removed the tracking device from Vesta's gadget, he still couldn't relax and hadn't dared to enter the cosmic network. Now that he was out of Nanjing, he could take a look. A gadget was a person's proof of identity. For example, Vesta's gadget contained all of his information, including his family and friends. Lu Yin opened the gadget and tried to connect to the network, but was met with a message saying that the network could not be connected. Even though he had guessed that this would happen, he was still disappointed. The students participating in the planetary evolution trial had all been registered, and their gadgets would be removed from the network upon death. This also meant that Vesta's death had been discovered long ago. Lu Yin sighed and looked up at the sky. He wasn't worried that the fact that he'd killed Vesta would be exposed. The planetary evolution trial was very important, and it was supervised by the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. No one was allowed to interfere with the trial. Although Earth was a native planet that had yet to reach outer space, it was still a part of the Great Yu Empire. This trial wasn't just for the students but for the people of Earth as well. This was a fair trial, and killing Vesta wasn't a surprise to the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. In fact, it might even be praised. This was one of the reasons why Lu Yin hadn't hesitated to kill Vesta. He wanted to be noticed. Any student who entered Earth would have no way of contacting the outside world. They could only watch but not speak. This was a trial of blood and iron, and death was common. Lu Yin looked at his gadget screen, but there weren't any useful messages. Finally, he found a few saved notifications from Vesta. Student Vesta, if you can't complete the mission within 3 months, the council will release a second batch of students. Please work hard. The Universe Youth Council has decided to cancel the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. Reorganization date to be determined. The Universe Youth Council has decided that Astral 10 will enter the Frostwave Weave in the Outerverse. There were a total of 3 notifications, 2 of which were related to the Universe Youth Council. Lu Yin stared at the screen in shock. He hadn't expected the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council to be cancelled, nor had he expected Astral 10 to appear in the Frostwave Weave. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 13. The Astral Combat Academy was one of the top academies in the universe, with a total of 10 academies. Aside from Astral 9, which was in the endless weave of the Outerverse, the other 9 were in the Innerverse. This time, however, Astral 10 would appear in the Frostwave Weave, which included the Great Yu Empire. Lu Yin turned off the screen, his eyes flashing. This piece of information was too valuable. The Astral Combat Academy was a fatal attraction to countless youths in the universe. It had nothing to do with him before, but now that Astral 10 was entering the Frostwave Weave at this juncture, it would be impossible not to be interested. In order to enter Astral 10, one had to have outstanding aptitude and power, as well as a decent amount of experience. One such experience was right in front of him: Earth's evolutionary trial. No wonder so many people had come for this trial. Vesta had probably come for the same reason. Lu Yin had a bad feeling. He didn't know what Vesta's mission was, and if no one completed it in 3 months, the second batch of students would descend. With Astral 10 about to appear, many people wanted to gain experience and increase their qualifications, including those from powerful clans and famous families. Earth's evolutionary trial was undoubtedly attractive, and the second batch of students might bring incomparable cruelty to Earth. Lu Yin grew anxious. If the first batch of students was at least sentinels, then the second batch might be even stronger. He might not be able to protect himself. He had to become a sentinel within 3 months, or he would be nothing more than an ant. A night passed, and the next day the army set off once more towards the north. Lu Yin grew even quieter, not staying in the armored vehicle but lying on the roof instead. Hubei Wuqing, the heart of China. More than 10 million survivors had gathered here, but even so, countless more came every day because of the presence of one of the 7 sages, Lu Xiaoge. Doomsday had descended, and a batch of strange ores had appeared around Wuqing. These ores contained light that would release light when cracked open. Lu Xiaoge used these ores as a foundation and combined them with his battle techniques to protect the 10 million survivors of Wuqing, which was why he was hailed as the Light Saint. Pillars of light shot up into the sky around the city, surrounding the entire city. This was why Wuqing was also known as the City of Light, or the City that never sleeps. At the center of Wuqing was a piece of land supported by pillars of light that floated high in the sky. This was where the Light Saint resided, and many called it the Heavenly Capital. Below the capital of Heavenly Capital was the Light Camp, guarded by 100,000 cultivators that radiated outwards. The capital of Heavenly Capital of Light had no grand palaces, just beautiful courtyards with no cover. Anyone standing in the capital of heaven could look up at the starry sky. At this moment, in the courtyard of the capital of heaven, a handsome young man stood at the border, looking into the distance. He raised his wine cup and took a sip, a strange smile appearing on his face. He was the light saint Lu Xiaoge. Not far from Lu Xiaoge was another young man. Although he was not as handsome as Lu Xiaoge, his eyes were filled with pride. He looked at Lu Xiaoge as if he was looking at an ant. Everything here is your resource, especially those light crystals. They can give you a 10-year head start over your peers. You're wasting them, said the youth behind Lu Xiaoge unhappily. Of light of lights of light, of light of light of light of light of light of light of light, of lights of. Lu Xiaoge nodded. All right, I'll listen to you. By the way, what did you mean by the division of regions? Can you explain it clearly? Pu-yi replied, there are unspoken rules of the trial. As long as we control a certain area, we can mark it as blue on the network. Usually, no one will attack the blue area in the early stages of the trial, unless it's an enemy. So Wuxia has already been marked as a blue area? Lu Xiaoge asked. Pu-yi snorted, of course. Do you think I'm the only one who's been here for the past few days? The trial is very cruel. Usually no one will fight to the death in the early stages. Of course, we also have to take into account each student's background. Coincidentally, my background isn't weak, so no one will disturb us after being marked. Lu Xiaoge smiled and nodded, I see. Alright, let me ask you. How's the investigation going? Pu-yi asked impatiently. He then glanced at the pillars of light with a hint of pain in his eyes. Turn off those pillars, it's too wasteful. Lu Xiaoge smiled and poured wine for Pu-yi. I've made some progress. Pu-yi's eyes lit up. Really? Tell me. Lu Xiaoge passed the glass to him. Take a look at this. Pu-yi was puzzled and subconsciously looked at the glass, but there was nothing special about it. There were only ripples in the wine, one after another, one after another, one after another. Lu Xiaoge smiled and waited for a while before speaking. Give me your gadget. Pu-yi's eyes were dull as he took off his gadget and passed it to Lu Xiaoge. Not long after, Lu Xiaoge turned it off and rubbed his head. This is troublesome, he actually turned off the network. Does that mean he found out that I'm controlling him? Forget it, Lu Xiaoge said as he put on his gadget. With a smile on his face, he looked up at the sky. 2 days later, the camp approached the front lines. If not for the fact that they had to repair the communication lines along the way, they would have arrived long ago. He had been staring at the moon for the past 2 days, causing Luo Yi to think that he had lost his mind. The convoy suddenly stopped and Susan spoke up. Boss, something's wrong. We haven't seen any survivors since yesterday, and there should be soldiers monitoring the route. We've been walking for almost a day, but we haven't seen a single person. Lu Yin stood up and looked into the distance. Troops, stop and rest. Avoiding the crowd, Lu Yin activated his gadget to measure the power level of the sentinels in a radius of 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, up to 10 kilometers. Finally, he detected a sentinel's power level 37 kilometers away, which was 1,800. That was the power level he had discovered. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn as he took out his map. 37 kilometers away was an abandoned county that was less than 20 kilometers away from the front lines, right between them and the convoy. He had the troops set up camp there while he headed north. He wanted to know if the sentinel was a human or a mutant beast. Less than 10 kilometers later, he knew that he didn't need to go any further. An army of cultivators had passed by, which meant that the abandoned county was a gathering place. In other words, the sentinel he had detected was one of the students who had descended to Earth. He muttered to himself for a moment before reinstalling Vesta's gadget. About 10 kilometers away from Lu Yin, a woman in white armor with waist-length hair looked at her gadget and snorted coldly before flying towards the south. A moment later, a white figure appeared in the sky and hovered there, staring down at Lu Yin coldly. Student, I've marked this area as blue. Please leave. Lu Yin looked at her and his eyes lit up. She was quite pretty. Hello, I'm Yata from the First Military Academy of the Great Yu Empire's Pagoda planet. I'm not interested, leave immediately, she said indifferently, energy rippling around her body and pressing down. Lu Yin hurriedly said, don't worry, I'm injured and weak. I'm no threat to you and I can give you resources, lots and lots of them. She looked at him coldly. A mere seeker dares to join a planet's evolutionary trial? How did you get in? My grandfather is the headmaster, Lu Yin said arrogantly. She was disgusted. Scram. Lu Yin immediately took out a few fire crystals from his cosmic ring and tossed them to her. Help me survive this trial and I'll give you a basket full of these when we get out. She caught them in shock, feeling the warmth of the crystals as she landed on the ground. Where did you get them? Lu Yin pretended to be proud. My grandfather gave them to me, of course. He's an explorer, so he can have as many as he wants. She narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists, releasing a trace of killing intent. Lu Yin retreated warily and glared at her. Don't do anything rash. Although no one can interfere with the trial, we can still find out who died and who was killed. You don't want to be hunted down by my grandfather, do you? She thought about it and released him. I can help you leave this planet alive, but the results have nothing to do with you. Lu Yin sighed. It doesn't matter. My grandfather can send me to Astral 10 no matter what, so the results are all yours. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 14. The girl grew even more disgusted and disdainful. Astral 10 wasn't a place for outsiders to meddle in, and so what if Lu Yin was an explorer? There were plenty of such powerhouses in the universe. Wait, how can I be sure you're not a native? She asked, staring at Lu Yin. Lu Yin raised his right hand and shook it rapidly, grasping the air like a curtain as he slammed it into the ground, creating a huge crater. Shockwave palm, she stared at him in shock. Lu Yin was pleased with himself. What do you think? This should prove it, right? The woman's eyes narrowed. The shockwave palm was not something that an ordinary person could use. Although it was a common battle technique, it could not be used unless one's physical strength reached a certain level. She had thought that even she could not use it, so she had not expected a mere seeker to be able to use it. You're still useful if you can use the shockwave palm. Help me take Nanjing and I'll add you to my score, she said calmly. Lu Yin was shocked. You want to take Nanjing? I heard there's an executioner there, he's a sentinel. I know, Orton was defeated by him, but I'm not trash like him. If we work together we'll be able to suppress him, she said coldly. How do you know a student was defeated by a native? He asked. Before the trial, students from the same academy would agree to work together if they landed in a nearby area. No one came for you? That's right, you're so weak. He secretly rejoiced that he hadn't impersonated Vesta. If this woman knew Orton, then she might know Vesta as well. Since she knew Orton, then why had he fled north after losing to Zhou Xian in the first place? But why had he gone east midway? Lu Yin didn't ask any more questions. The more he asked, the easier it would be to expose himself. This woman wanted him to work with her, which meant there was a conflict between her and Orton. Either way, Nanjing was in danger. All right, I'll help you, but I need to get stronger first, he said. She frowned. No need. Then I'll have to recover from my injuries. She stared at him, grabbed him, and flew back to the gathering point. Vesta's formcast model could only be used 3 times, and he himself had used it twice to break through from a normal person to a seeker and then to a sentinel. He needed a new formcast model to break through to the sentinel realm, which was why he had tried to get close to this woman in order to break through. There were not many survivors in the small colony in the county, only about 200,000. However, there were many soldiers in the army. Most of them were wearing the uniform of the prison camp. These people should be frontline soldiers under the control of this woman. The executioner from Jinlin is quite capable. He had 80,000 cultivators under him, and 20,000 of them were sent to the front lines in an attempt to establish contact with other regions. 6 of them were seekers, but I killed 2 of them and 1 died in the mouth of a mutant beast. There are still 3 left, the woman explained as she brought him to the top of a building. I still don't know your name. Geraldine, the woman said calmly. At that moment, a figure arrived at the top of the building and reported respectfully, My lord, there are troops from the prison camp 30 kilometers away. Lu Yin turned around and saw the newcomer, and his expression changed. The newcomer also saw Lu Yin and looked at him suspiciously. Lu Yin suddenly rushed towards the newcomer and struck out with a shockwave palm. Before Geraldine could react, the palm landed on the newcomer's chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood as his body was sent flying off the roof and smashed into the ground. "What are you doing?" Geraldine glared at Lu Yin. "It's him," Lu Yin replied angrily. "He's the one who ambushed me as soon as I landed here. If not for him I wouldn't have been injured." "When?" Geraldine asked coldly. "The day we arrived," Lu Yin answered without hesitation. "Where?" "About 100 kilometers south," Lu Yin replied before looking at her. "Are you suspecting me? Or are you unwilling to part with this native?" "Watch your words," Geraldine snorted. "I don't care about a mere native, but you can't kill my people." "Isn't he just a native?" Lu Yin didn't care. "He's also one of my people," Geraldine said angrily. Lu Yin was helpless. Fine, I know. It won't happen again. By the way, the troops 30 kilometers away are mine. Should I bring them over?" Geraldine turned around and looked in the direction of Nanjing before looking at her gadget and ignoring Lu Yin. Lu Yin looked down and sighed. This person was called Li Hongliang, and he had been present when Vesta was killed. He knew that Lu Yin was an earthling and had even killed Vesta. If Lu Yin hadn't acted, Li Hongliang would have recognized him. This woman wasn't Vesta, and Lu Yin could sense that she was stronger than him. His ambush might not succeed, so it was better to wait. The front lines were already gone, and Geraldine's presence had caused them to crumble. The soldiers had either been absorbed or fled, and he hadn't been able to contact Nanjing since that morning. He brought Luo Yi, Zhou Xian, and nearly 10,000 soldiers to the base and sternly warned the two captains who had sided with Geraldine. That night he went to find her again. "What? You want to borrow my star crystals?" Geraldine looked at him in shock. Lu Yin nodded. "Don't worry, I'll pay you back tenfold when I get back." Geraldine sized him up. "You have fire crystals but no star crystals?" "I've used them all up." Geraldine hesitated. Star crystals weren't like the energy crystals found in mutant beasts on Earth. Every planet or ecosystem had its own energy source, and it wasn't exactly the same as star energy. There were countless ways to cultivate, but in the end one had to cultivate the universe. Star crystals, on the other hand, contained star energy that could be absorbed. This type of energy crystal could be absorbed and cultivated by anyone. Normally, it could only be produced in an ecosystem that was integrated with the universe's ecosystem. Currently, Earth could produce fire crystals, ice crystals, and other strange crystals, but it couldn't produce star crystals, which was what the students needed the most. "You don't trust me? How about this? I'll make a trade." Geraldine looked at him. "How?" Lu Yin poured out a pile of fire crystals from his cosmic ring. "I'll trade with these." Geraldine's eyes lit up as she tried to recall the exchange rates for different types of energy crystals in the universe, but she couldn't find a uniform one. Different locations in the universe had different exchange rates, and now that they were on Earth, she had to adjust the exchange rates for someone like Lu Yin who desperately needed star crystals. "I can give you 5 star crystals," Geraldine said flatly. Lu Yin's eyes widened. "You're too greedy. These fire crystals are worth at least 20 star crystals and you're only giving me 5? That's a 4-fold discount." "It's up to you," Geraldine said arrogantly. Lu Yin had no choice but to grit his teeth. "Fine, but I have a condition. Let me test the power of my battle technique." "Anytime," Geraldine scoffed. "Anytime." He took the 5 thumb-sized crystals and turned to leave. After he left, Geraldine excitedly put away the fire crystals. These strange crystals could be used to aid in the cultivation of battle techniques, and they could also increase the power of battle techniques. They were treasures that countless people dreamed of, and to her they were even more valuable than star crystals. She needed them for her battle techniques, so she had struck it rich. Pagoda planet? Why haven't I heard of it before? Is it a planet that produces these strange minerals? Geraldine was puzzled. Lu Yin's lips curled up as he left Geraldine's residence. Although the exchange was a loss, it was all for nothing. More importantly, no one else on Earth had star crystals besides these students. Vesta didn't even have a cosmic ring, so he couldn't carry them around. Geraldine's family was much better off than Vesta's, so perhaps he could get something from her. Lu Yin returned to his own residence, which was actually an abandoned villa. He buried the fire crystals around the perimeter to prevent anyone from sneaking in. He returned to the living room and threw away all the furniture before taking out an energy crystal and crushing it. Star energy immediately surged and filled the room. Using formcast models to cultivate allowed one to directly absorb star energy from the void, but the rate of absorption depended on one's cultivation technique. Many powerful organizations would collect star crystals in order to increase their rate of absorption, allowing the star energy to explode in a small space. This was one of the reasons why many organizations fought over star crystals. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 15. Lu Yin hadn't expected to be able to use this method on Earth. With the serious art doubling his cultivation speed, his rate of energy absorption far exceeded that of students like Geraldine. He was probably one of the best even in the Great Yu Empire. It didn't take long for an entire star crystal to be used up, and the amount of star energy he could absorb increased significantly. Following that, he crushed another one and began to absorb it. Having enough star crystals didn't mean he could reach the peak of his current realm. There were still impurities in the crystals that needed to be condensed, something only those who trained with formcast models could do. Only melders could remove the impurities by directly absorbing star crystals for cultivation, so their energy density wasn't high and their combat power wasn't stable. They also had to rely on star crystals to cultivate, but these crystals were hard to come by. This created a vicious cycle, which was why they were called war slaves and wandering soldiers. He had absorbed a total of 5 star crystals, and only then did he feel the surging energy within his body. He had reached the peak of the realm of Earth, the peak of the realm of Earth. He was only one step away from the Sentinel realm, but that step required a formcast model. Lu Yin rested on the roof of the villa for the night and went straight to Geraldine the next day. Let's spar. Geraldine was speechless. You want to spar with me so early in the morning? I may be a cultivator, but I'm still a woman. What kind of man would pick a fight with a woman so early in the morning? Lu Yin also felt that something was off, but he really wanted to know the difference between himself and an elite sentinel. Then I'll come find you in the afternoon. No need, just spar if you want, Geraldine said. She didn't think much of Lu Yin. If not for his shockwave palm, she wouldn't have even asked to work with him. The two found an open space 10 meters away from each other, the faint roars of beasts coming from both sides and the faint smell of blood drifting in the wind. Go ahead, I won't retaliate, Geraldine said calmly with a proud gaze. Lu Yin clenched his right fist and released it, tearing the air apart like a curtain. He kicked out with both legs, the shockwave splitting the ground as he rushed in front of Geraldine and struck out with his palm. This was a pure shockwave palm, his full-strength attack. Geraldine was surprised by the shockwave palm. She had planned to block it with one hand, but ended up raising both. Boom! The shockwave swept across, the huge pressure crushing the ground and shattering it. Lu Yin's palm pressed Geraldine's legs into the ground, creating a crater that was several meters wide. Geraldine was surprised. Not bad. Even sentinels from our academy might not be able to use such a move. If it's a sneak attack, it's enough to kill a sentinel below 2000 power. Geraldine's SS Tuzes, Geraldine. To continue, Geraldine. Geraldine frowned and her hands went numb. Enough, your attacks are useless against me. My power level is over 2000, and you should know that with every increase in power level, the strength of my energy will be different. Last palm. He shouted, starlight flashing on his right hand as the moon revolved around it. The air around it flowed like the shockwave palm. This was the serious palm. Geraldine's heartbeat quickened the moment his final palm landed, and her body turned into an afterimage as she disappeared from the spot where she'd been standing. The ground within 100 meters was pulverized and a shockwave spread out in all directions. There was a deafening boom and even the air itself was distorted by the shockwave. Geraldine's figure appeared a few meters away, shocked by the scene. What's that? My grandfather taught me this, the extreme shockwave palm. Geraldine's eyes narrowed. She couldn't recognize the serious palm at all, but the shockwave palm was so powerful that she felt a sense of danger. I heard people say that shockwave palms can be stacked. That should have been a double shockwave palm, she said solemnly. Lu Yin shrugged. Maybe it's a different name. Geraldine looked at him, her gaze no longer arrogant and instead solemn. A double shockwave palm requires a high level of physical strength and not many sentinels can achieve it. Our academy doesn't even have one. You're very powerful, you'll be able to compete with any elite once you reach the Sentinel realm. You might even be able to enter the Empire's top academy, Yu Academy. Lu Yin was shocked. Yu Academy? Me? Geraldine said, maybe. With your physical strength it's not impossible. Right, I'm tired. Let's go. After saying that, Geraldine left. Lu Yin looked at Glanny's departing figure and raised his hand to look at it. Exchanging pointers was one thing, but more importantly he wanted to see if he could defeat her. This woman's reaction was very fast, and at the critical moment she had used her footwork battle technique to dodge his attack. She was worthy of being an elite of the academy. However, he wasn't too bad himself. Sirius had retracted its power the moment she dodged. If she thought that was his full strength she would be disappointed. Since he couldn't contact her in Nanjing, he had Luo Yi and the rest stay in the colony. Geraldine didn't care about them, saving him the trouble of explaining. However, after 2 days Luo Yi came looking for him. "Brother Lu, how long are we going to stay here?" Luo Yi asked, staring at him. She'd heard from the 2 frontline captains that this was a supply depot, but she still felt that something was off. The people here often talked about Realm of Sky powerhouses, but where had they come from? "Don't ask too many questions, I'll give you an answer in a few days." Luo Yi wanted to ask more, but her expression suddenly changed as she looked up into the sky. Lu Yin looked back and saw Geraldine descending anxiously. "Let's go, Orton and the rest are heading to Nanjing." Lu Yin was shocked, but he grabbed her arm and followed her towards Nanjing. Luo Yi was shocked. If she wasn't mistaken, that woman was wearing the same armor as the aliens that had attacked Nanjing a while ago. Zhou Xian walked over from a short distance away, equally shocked. Geraldine flew as fast as she could towards Nanjing, but since she was carrying Lu Yin she couldn't go that fast. "How do you know Orton is going to Nanjing?" he asked. Geraldine coldly replied, "That has nothing to do with you. Remember, we'll act according to circumstances when we reach Nanjing. Our goal is to seize the city, and Orton definitely didn't go alone. His helpers won't be weak, so be careful." Lu Yin's gaze turned solemn. If Orton dared to abandon Geraldine, it meant that his helpers were definitely stronger than her. According to his calculations, Vesta's power level was around 1,500, Orton was close to 2,000, and Geraldine was over 2,000. Orton's helpers would definitely be far stronger than that, and they might not even be alone. Hoping that Zhou Xian could hold on, he looked towards the south. Half an hour later, Geraldine and Lu Yin quickly approached Nanjing. 2 figures floated above the city, one of them being Orton. A large chunk of his ring armor had been shattered, and a young man stood next to him with his hands behind his back and an arrogant look in his eyes. All of the survivors in Nanjing looked up in fear. 2 Realm of Sky powerhouses? Zhou Xian soared into the sky and stopped 100 meters away from Orton and Zhou Xian. His expression was solemn as he said, "You again?" Orton sneered, "Isn't it a pity that you didn't kill me last time?" Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed, "Very much so. Too bad you'll never have the chance." "This is my senior, Terence," Orton said proudly. Zhou Xian glanced at Terence, sensing the energy fluctuations emanating from his body. His heart sank. This person was far stronger than Orton. Terence looked at Zhou Xian and said coldly, "I didn't expect there to be someone as strong as you among the natives. I can help you reach the heavens, follow me." "Senior Terence, there's no need to talk to him. He's stubborn and won't agree," Orton said. Terence glared at Orton. "It's not your place to interrupt when I'm talking." Orton hurriedly nodded, gritting his teeth as he glared at Zhou Xian, hatred flashing in his eyes. Zhou Xian tightened his grip on his axe. "There's no way I'll follow you. You aliens want Nanjing, don't you? You'll have to defeat me first." He then flew towards the north of Nanjing, not wanting to fight in the city's airspace. Unfortunately, it wasn't up to him to decide. Zhou Xian flew less than a kilometer away before Orton slashed at Zhou Xian, the sword chi slicing off a corner of the mountain and causing countless screams. "You're courting death." Zhou Xian roared as he swung his axe at Orton. Orton sneered and raised his sword to attack. A few minutes later, Geraldine arrived at Nanjing with Lu Yin. She immediately saw the destroyed Zhou Xian and the wailing of the survivors. Countless people had fled outside the city, and the earth had cracked open, swallowing everything in its path. Void energy rippled and destroyed countless buildings. Even the clouds in the sky were blown away. Within Nanjing, Zhou Xian spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at the sky with great difficulty. Terence and Orton looked on coldly. Not bad enough to rank in the top 15 of the military academy. Unfortunately, you met me, Terence said coldly. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 16. Suddenly, a beam of light shot into the sky from the west of Nanjing. Orton slashed out with his sword, but the two collided and exploded. Technological weapons? Orton sneered. The only reason they didn't fight outside the city was because they were wary of technological weapons. Even this native planet had the technology to step into the heavens, enough to create weapons that could threaten them. Outside the city, Geraldine and Lu Yin landed. It's Terence? This is bad, Geraldine exclaimed. Lu Yin was puzzled. Terence? He's one of the top 3 in the first military academy, with a power level of 2,500, Geraldine said solemnly. His heart sank. As long as you can stall him, I'll deal with Orton as soon as possible. Geraldine thought about it. Sure, but not for too long. Lu Yin nodded and rushed towards Zhou Xian's location. Beams of light shot towards Orton one after another, but he grew impatient. I'll deal with you after I kill this native. He then charged towards the ground and stabbed at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian grit his teeth and swung his axe to meet Orton head-on. In terms of strength, he was confident that he could fight Terence. But with Orton on the side, victory would be decided immediately. Terence landed on the ground as well. Although he was confident that he could avoid the attacks of technological weapons, he was still cautious. As he approached the battle between Zhou Xian and Orton, he took out a fire crystal and threw it into the sky. The red crystal was quite eye-catching, but Orton and Zhou Xian didn't notice it because they were busy fighting. Terence's eyes burned with passion, but before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his back. Twisting his body like a leaf in the wind, he avoided Geraldine's second attack. It's you? Geraldine did not say a word. Instead, she took out a flame crystal from her cosmic ring and crushed it, causing the scorching flames to burn the ground. Blazing palm. Geraldine growled as she struck out with her palm. Flames gathered in the center of her palm and transformed into an even darker color as she attacked Terence. Terence was furious and coughed up blood. You're courting death. His right palm shook rapidly, grabbing at the air as he used shockwave palm. Boom. The two palms collided, flames and shockwaves sweeping across the land and destroying all buildings within 100 meters. Huge flames were swept up by the shockwaves, dancing in the air like a fiery snake. Geraldine took a few steps back, her face pale. Terence's shockwave palm was much stronger than Lu Yin's, and even if she used a battle technique, it would still be difficult for her to block it. Terence wasn't having a good time either. Fire battle techniques were originally very powerful and destructive, and Geraldine had even borrowed the power of the flame crystal. This palm strike wasn't any weaker than his. Geraldine, this is my territory. Terence roared. Geraldine didn't say anything. The ring armor on his body reflected a red light under the illumination of the flames. Terence clenched his teeth. Ring armor covered his body. He hadn't been wearing it since the beginning, but now he felt the pressure. More importantly, he was injured. In the distance, Orton turned around in shock. Geraldine, why are you here? Zhou Xian roared and swung his axe at Orton. Orton did not dare to be careless. He raised his sword and swung it at Zhou Xian. A sharp chi swept out and cut the ground open. Lu Yin suddenly made his move, using the roving step to rush to Orton's side. He struck out with a palm that caused stars to appear. This was serious palm. Neither Orton nor Zhou Xian had expected someone to be hiding nearby. The moment they saw Lu Yin, Orton froze while Zhou Xian was puzzled. But in the next moment, serious palms struck Orton's chest. Orton's heart was shattered before he could even scream. The majestic energy even penetrated his chest and blasted into a house, destroying it. The ground couldn't withstand the pressure and immediately shattered. Zhou Xian looked at Lu Yin in shock. You. Lu Yin turned around and swept his leg towards Zhou Xian, his back facing Geraldine and Terence. "Attack me," he whispered. Zhou Xian's eyes flashed, but he still attacked Lu Yin. He didn't hold back at all, using a storm slash. Lu Yin used the roving step to avoid the attack. Although he wasn't injured, his clothes were still torn. "Push me over there," Lu Yin ordered. Zhou Xian roared and swung his axe horizontally. Lu Yin borrowed the force of the axe and was thrown towards the battle between Terence and Geraldine. Boom! A violent tremor spread into the distance. Geraldine's face paled and her right hand trembled. She had been heavily injured by Terence. Terence wasn't faring any better either. His armor had been scorched and cracked by the flames. Coincidentally, Lu Yin crashed into a wall not far from Terence and slowly fell to the ground. Terence glanced at Lu Yin and then at the dead Orton in the distance. His expression changed and he was about to say something when Zhou Xian flew off into the distance. "You can't escape." Terence leapt up and chased after Zhou Xian, his back facing Lu Yin. Lu Yin used the abandoned house to leap into the air and attack Terence with a palm. Serious palms spun like a star as it slammed into Terence's back. Terence didn't care about Lu Yin at first, but the attack made him feel an intense sense of danger. He instinctively dodged, but it was too late. The star exploded as Terence was sent crashing into the ground, creating a huge crater. Terence had reacted in time and sent flying backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood before crashing into a wall. Vesta's ring armor had been completely shattered, and Lu Yin's was also heavily injured. Geraldine clutched her arm and walked over to the crater to look at the bottom. Terence was lying on the ground, his face pale as he coughed up blood. Geraldine stared at Lu Yin in shock, unable to imagine how he had managed to injure him so severely. But before she could think any further, the dying Terence suddenly opened his eyes and pulled out a strangely shaped gun. He aimed at Geraldine and fired a shot. A strand of energy pierced through her shoulder, and Geraldine countered with a blazing palm, once again landing on the spot where Terence had been struck by Lu Yin's cosmic palm. This palm completely shattered Terence's organs and killed him. Geraldine collapsed to the ground and stared at Terence's corpse in shock, a chill running down her spine. Although there was no limit to the number of deaths in the planet's evolutionary trial, too many deaths would cause disgust. Both Orton and Terence had died in this battle, especially Terence. He had been one of the top 3 students of the military academy and had held high hopes for him. Now that he was dead, Geraldine was nervous. Lu Yin dragged his heavily injured body to her side and said weakly, "Don't worry, I'll ask Grandpa to transfer you to Pagoda Planet." Geraldine stared at him coldly. "What's with the palm you hit Terence with? Even a double shockwave palm shouldn't have been able to injure him." "You're overthinking it, he was injured by you. I just happened to hit the same spot," Lu Yin replied. Geraldine clearly didn't believe him. How could someone with a power level of 2,500 be injured by a seeker? Even if it was a coincidence, it couldn't be that simple. Suddenly there was a shout from behind them. Zhou Xian, who they thought had escaped, appeared once more and swung his axe at Geraldine and Lu Yin. Geraldine instinctively grabbed Lu Yin and used him as a shield, but Zhou Xian hurriedly changed direction when he saw Lu Yin being pushed out. The axe missed Lu Yin and instead slammed into the ground beside his ear. Lu Yin turned around and slammed his palm into Geraldine's body. His injuries weren't as severe as Orton's, but it was still enough to heavily injure her. Geraldine's face paled as she endured the pain and kicked Lu Yin, sending him flying and landing beside Terence. Zhou Xian roared again and swung his axe at Geraldine, but Geraldine picked up Terence's gun and fired. The beam pierced through Zhou Xian's axe and his shoulder, sending him flying more than 10 meters before crashing to the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The scene was silent for a moment, with only the flames burning on the ground. The battle between 4 sentinels and a seeker had destroyed half of Nanjing, drowning it in a sea of flames. Geraldine took out some healing pills from her cosmic ring and swallowed them, recovering from her injuries. A few minutes later, sounds started coming from all around her. Geraldine's expression changed as she crawled out of the crater. Her body was heavily injured, and her shoulder had been pierced through by a beam of light. It took her a lot of effort to reach Zhou Xian's side, who was unconscious on the ground. Soon Feng Hong, Xian and the others surrounded Geraldine. "Surrender immediately and we can spare your life." Geraldine was disdainful. "You natives want to spare my life? What, you don't want this native's life? She pointed her gun at Zhou Xian's head. Release the executioner. Feng Hong shouted. Retreat 5 kilometers or I'll kill him. Geraldine snapped. Feng Hong and the rest looked at each other but didn't move. Geraldine's eyes flashed coldly as she picked up a rock and smashed it into Zhou Xian's head, causing blood to gush out. Feng Hong shouted, Stop, we can retreat, but we have to treat the executioner or he's dead. Geraldine agreed. Soon enough, a doctor walked over to Geraldine and Zhou Xian and checked his body before performing emergency treatment. It took a full 20 minutes to stop Zhou Xian's bleeding. The executioner's injuries are too severe, we can't delay any further. We need comprehensive treatment as soon as possible, the doctor said. Geraldine ignored them. Retreat 5 kilometers, I'll leave in 3 hours or I'll kill this native. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 17. Can the executioner last 3 hours? Xianxia asked, glaring at the doctor. The doctor nodded, yes. Soon all the soldiers in the surrounding camp retreated. There was no one around and Geraldine heaved a sigh of relief. 3 hours was just an insurance number. She only needed 2 hours to fully recover, and without a sentinel around no one would be able to stop her. Geraldine glanced at Terence and then at Orton. Wait, where's Orton? Geraldine's expression changed and she wanted to get up to check on him, but the slightest movement caused intense pain throughout her body. She sat down helplessly, but there was no need to rush. Even if Orton wasn't dead, his injuries would definitely be worse than hers. That Yada also had to be taught a lesson for daring to attack her. 1,000 meters away from Geraldine, Orton's corpse lay quietly on the ground. Lu Yin panted heavily. His injuries were severe as well, but the formcast model was the most important thing right now. The formcast model could heal him to a certain extent. After observing for a while, Lu Yin cut off 5 of Orton's fingers before finding the formcast model chip. This is the moment. Lu Yin was excited as he fused the formcast model into his body. Intense pain immediately engulfed his entire body as he once again experienced that supreme power. All of his cells were being reorganized and refined, and the surging power seemed to overlook the heavens as it brought a tiny ant like him out of earth. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The cell reconstruction was painful, but it was also a blessing. He could feel his body evolving and becoming more compatible with the stars. An hour passed and Geraldine's complexion recovered slightly. Give me another hour and I'll be able to move, she said excitedly. She had no intention of leaving. Controlling Nanjing would give her a bargaining chip to negotiate with even stronger powerhouses in the future. Although the blue zones were protected to a certain extent, not everyone followed this rule. It was fine for ordinary planets to evolve, but now that Astral 10 was about to appear, everyone wanted to shine in the trials. This time Earth's trials were destined to be brutal. What worried her the most was the arrival of the second batch of trial takers in 2 months. Their batch of trial takers had already been determined long ago. At that time news of Astral 10 had just been released, so there hadn't been many people who had joined the trial. However, the second batch was completely different. The second batch of students had all come for Astral 10. Lanny didn't know which personalities would appear, but she had a premonition that unimaginable geniuses would appear. She didn't plan on monopolizing Jinling. That wasn't realistic. She wanted to use Jinling to rely on certain people in exchange for better results. This was her goal, and it should also be Terrence's goal. Another half an hour passed and Geraldine felt that she had recovered slightly. Just as she was about to get up and look for Orton, she sensed a surge of star energy not too far away. Geraldine looked over in shock. What was this? 1,000 meters away, the pain in Lu Yin's body gradually subsided. He clenched his fists and felt the strength in his body. Now he could be considered to have truly stepped into the world of cultivation and had the qualifications to look up at the stars. Geraldine tapped on his gadget to test his combat power. Beep 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 beep. The sound kept ringing. His final combat power was 1080. Geraldine was puzzled. 1080? Did he just break through to the Sentinel realm? Yada. 1,000 meters away, Lu Yin pushed aside the rubble and walked out to look at Geraldine. Geraldine was shocked, her heart sinking as her eyes flashed. You broke through to the Sentinel realm? Lu Yin approached her step by step and smiled. Didn't you detect it? Geraldine frowned, but her tone was gentle. I'm sorry, Yata. I shouldn't have pushed you out to block the enemy's attack, but you have to believe me. It was an instinctive reaction, I didn't do it on purpose. Lu Yin walked a dozen meters away from her and smiled. Of course I believe you. You're an elite of the academy and you've experienced life and death situations. It's normal for you to have such instinctive reactions. Geraldine smiled. That's good. Yata, Terence and Orton are all dead and this native is heavily injured. From now on Jinling is ours. If we work together no one will be able to take it away from us. That's right. Before that, can I borrow something from you? Lu Yin smiled at Geraldine. Geraldine's expression changed but she forced a smile. What? Nothing, just some energy crystals. Geraldine's gaze turned sharp. What did you say? Lu Yin stared at her. Let's put it this way, hand over your cosmic ring. You want to rob me? She shouted. Lu Yin shrugged. Don't make it sound so dark, I'm just taking a look. Geraldine stood up and glared at him. Don't think that you can suppress me just because you've healed some of your injuries, Yata. You haven't fully recovered yet and I've also healed some of my injuries. If we really fight it's hard to say who will win. Don't forget, you just became a sentinel with a power level of 1080. Lu Yin's lips curled up. Is that so? If you really believed in my power level, why would you waste so much time talking to me? Geraldine's gaze flickered but she didn't reply. Lu Yin continued. Power level is just the influence of one's star energy on the outside world. It doesn't represent one's true strength. Isn't that the first sentence of the Academy's textbooks? Wrong, the textbooks just don't want to discourage commoners. The stronger one's power level, the stronger their star energy. It has a suppressive effect on those with lower power levels. Why else do you think Terence is stronger than me? The difference between our power levels is almost double, and no battle technique can make up for it, Geraldine said coldly. Lu Yin raised his foot and approached her once more. Make your move if you're confident. Geraldine's gaze turned fierce as she stared at the approaching Lu Yin. She took out a flame crystal from her cosmic ring and crushed it, causing flames to soar into the air. Blazing palm, she was forced to use. Even if she could defeat Lu Yin she would be injured again but she had no choice. Seeing Geraldine's palm strike coming at him, Lu Yin raised his hand, the moon revolving around his palm as he unleashed the cosmic palm without hesitation. The moment they made contact, the moon exploded with a terrifying force that completely destroyed the flames, sending Geraldine flying 100 meters away. Her arm was broken and she fell to the ground in a sorry state as she stared at Lu Yin in disbelief. She had never imagined that Lu Yin would be able to injure her so severely with a single palm. What battle technique was that? It definitely couldn't have been the shockwave palm. It was no match for the blazing palm. Their power levels were almost double and ordinary battle techniques couldn't make up for it. Lu Yin looked at his right palm with a burning gaze. This was the Sirius palm. After reaching the Sentinel realm, the Sirius palm's power had increased once again. Stars would appear in his palm and they would explode with enough power to crush everything. And this was just one star, what if there were two? 10. How powerful would it be? Lu Yin didn't even dare think about it. This battle technique couldn't be leaked. The commotion attracted Zhou Xian and the rest, but when the army reappeared, they only saw Lu Yin standing on the ground. Brother Lu. Feng Hong was shocked. Zhou Xian and the rest were shocked as well. They had all retreated far away during the battle and hadn't seen anything. Lock that woman up and save the executioner, Lu Yin said. Geraldine was quickly taken away by the army, and Zhou Xian was rushed to the treatment room by the doctors. Wait, Zhou Xian called out weakly. Everyone gathered around. Zhou Xian looked at Lu Yin. I'll leave Nanjing to you while I'm treated, please. Lu Yin nodded. Don't worry. Thank you, Zhou Xian said before fainting. Today's battle had caused great damage to Nanjing, and Lu Yin ordered the army to rebuild the destroyed colony and pacify the survivors. He also ordered Luo Yi and the rest to rush back to Nanjing. There were many things that Lu Yin didn't have to worry about as the camp had its own way of dealing with them. He went to the lowest level of the prison to find Geraldine. Her limbs were tied up and there were many high-tech weapons hidden around her. If she made any strange movements, they would immediately shoot. Lu Yin dismissed the guards and walked over to her. He took her cosmic ring and cut her finger, using the genetic code in her blood to unlock the ring and pour out everything inside. Cosmic rings were very precious and not many people could afford them. Vesta and Orton didn't have them and only Geraldine and Terence did. Terence's ring had been taken by Lu Yin and he'd gotten quite a few good things. "Who are you?" she asked. Lu Yin smiled. "What do you think?" "You're definitely from outer space, you're definitely not from Earth," Geraldine said with certainty as she glared at him. Lu Yin nodded and took all the energy crystals. He put the rest of the undergarments into the ring and returned it to her. Without the genetic code, the ring was useless and there was no need for him to steal it. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 18. My name is Lu Yin, don't get it wrong. Is that your name on Earth? She asked. Lu Yin didn't answer and just stared at her. Log into the network and change Nanjing to blue. Geraldine sneered and ignored him. Lu Yin sighed. I don't actually like torture, but this is the camp. They have plenty of ways to make you submit. These natives will pay the price. Geraldine was furious. But before that, you'll pay an even more terrifying price. Lu Yin stared at her coldly. Geraldine exchanged glances with Lu Yin and finally gave in. At the end of the day, she was just a student. She could be arrogant, cold, and even cruel to Earthlings, but that was only because of the difference in status. Once that difference was removed, she was no different from an ordinary student. Geraldine changed Nanjing to blue right in front of Lu Yin's eyes. Lu Yin looked over and saw that a portion of Earth had turned blue, which meant that those places were completely under the control of these students. Of course, not all of them were like this. There might be some who were forced to change the color, but such cases were rare. Parts of China, Europe, America, and even Africa were all blue. Lu Yin was most concerned about Hubei, which had turned blue as well. Had Lu Xiaoge given in? Lu Yin pondered. Or had he been killed? Let me ask you, who are the strongest among the students? Lu Yin stared at Geraldine. Geraldine shook her head. I don't know. The planetary evolution trial was organized by the Great Yu Empire, and there are students from various academies. I only know about the first military academy, and Terence should be very strong. I really don't know about the others. Lu Yin didn't press the issue. The true test would be in 2 months, and he was confident that he could handle the first batch of students. Everyone was busy at the moment, and Lu Yin personally left Nanjing to kill the realm of sky mutant beasts that his gadget had detected. It was only 5 days later that everyone stopped working. Lu Yin held a meeting with all the captains, including Luo Yi, who had just rushed back from the front lines. Zhou Xian was completely convinced by Lu Yin's abilities. He had replaced the executioner not long after joining the camp, and he felt that his future was bright. Thanks to his support, Zhou Xian had already entered the realm of Earth, which was the equivalent of a seeker. Once he reached the Sentinel realm, he would be worth a lot. Zhou Xian was filled with motivation because of Lu Yin's praise, and he secretly vowed to become stronger as soon as possible. The more motivated he was, the more Lu Yin would praise him. Everything was heading towards a bright future. No one in the meeting was unconvinced by Lu Yin's strength. The fact that he dared to interfere in a Sky Realm battle was a testament to his strength. Furthermore, Lu Yin had already confessed that he had reached the realm of Sky. That was the strength of an executioner and not something a captain would dare to challenge. As for the 2 captains who sided with Geraldine, Lu Yin stripped them of their positions and demoted them to the army to atone for their crimes. Right now, the most important thing is to give up on the front lines and focus on expanding Nanjing, Lu Yin said to the remaining 8 captains. Someone hesitated. Opening a path to the capital was one of the executioner's basic plans. It wouldn't be good to give up on it. The bespectacled girl Xianxia looked at him and said, I agree. With Nanjing's current strength, it's not enough to connect to the other regions. Feng Hong and the rest followed suit. Lu Yin stood up. Then it's decided. Recall all of the soldiers and expand westward. We'll recover the lost territory step by step. He then left, but before he left he said, find me a star chart of the solar system, the more detailed the better. Everyone else in the meeting looked at each other, but no one spoke. Xianxia watched Lu Yin's departing figure and fell into deep thought. She felt that this person was even more domineering than the executioner, and he also seemed to have designs on Nanjing. The executioner had only let him manage the city temporarily, but this person had overthrown the executioner's plans. Although she agreed, what would happen if the executioner woke up? Feng Hong, stay by the executioner's side for the time being, Xianxia whispered to Feng Hong. Why? Feng Hong was puzzled. It's nothing, just protect the executioner. She was worried that Lu Yin would act against the executioner and kill him to gain complete control of Nanjing. Across from them, Luo Yi's eyes flickered as she listened to the conversation. Zhao Yu had left a few days ago, heading to the northeast on her own. Lu Yin admired her courage, but it wasn't a wise decision. There had once been 80,000 cultivators in the camp, but after deducting those who had gone to the front lines, there were only 50,000 left. The city's defenses had been greatly boosted, and the various captains were now guarding every corner of the city. As the afterglow of the setting sun faded away, beams of light flashed across the sky, destroying flying mutant beasts. Atop the city walls, Lu Yin spoke up. Use firearms if you see a stampede of beasts or zombies. Don't be afraid of wasting resources. Understood, the two captains replied. Suddenly, there was a cry in the distance as the zombies on the ground were torn apart into pools of blood. A giant flying mutant beast was flying at a low altitude, heading straight for Nanjing. Everyone panicked. Attack. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes and leapt into the air, Orton's sword in his hand. He slashed out with sentinel energy, smashing the flying mutant beast into the ground. Its head was twisted in a grotesque manner as it wailed in pain. Lu Yin landed on the ground and stepped on the beast's back, stabbing his sword into its brain. The beast trembled twice before collapsing to the ground, dead. Countless people were shocked by this scene, but then erupted into cheers. Someone started shouting "Hidden Sage," and countless others followed suit. Lu Yin's mouth twitched. He didn't want to bear that title. He hurriedly stopped the crowd, but the Hidden Sage's name gradually spread. There weren't many zombies or mutant beasts around Nanjing, most of them having been cleared out by the camp. Following Lu Yin's orders, the camp focused most of their forces on the west, with nearly half of the captains heading to the front lines to open up a path. More and more survivors arrived in Nanjing and naturally more cultivators. Half a month passed quickly, and there were less than 70 days left until the second batch of students arrived. During this time, Lu Yin had absorbed a portion of the star crystals and raised his power level to 1,500. He still had half of them left. The main purpose of star crystals wasn't to speed up the absorption of energy, but rather to train battle techniques and act as a power source for powerful technological weapons. They could also be used to replenish energy when energy was lacking. Most cultivators who used formcast models rarely absorbed energy from star crystals. Training battle techniques required energy, and battle techniques were the foundation of a powerhouse. Powerful battle techniques could increase a person's power several times over, and the higher one's power level was on the surface, the more likely they were to be feared. Of course, the higher one's power level was, the more energy one had. The same attack could cause a greater effect. For example, Terrence's shockwave palm had been able to match Geraldine's battle technique, but he had still kept a portion of his star crystals to train his battle technique. It was a pity he hadn't succeeded, or the battle half a month ago would have ended differently. Lu Yin wanted to use his remaining star crystals to train the serious palm, but he had to try something else. After half a month, Geraldine finally gave in and asked to see Lu Yin. Lu Yin wasn't merciful to Geraldine. Although he hadn't tortured her, he had locked her up in a dark dungeon with no one to talk to and no one to accompany her. Although she was provided with food, it was of poor quality with only mutant rat meat. These 2 weeks were the darkest days of her life, and she finally couldn't take it anymore. I'm willing to help you. Please let me go. Geraldine's face was pale and her eyes were cloudy. Her body was covered in an unpleasant stench and she looked at Lu Yin pleadingly. What can you help me with? He asked indifferently. I can help you protect Nanjing and I'll do anything you want. Let me go, I can't take it anymore. Lu Yin stared at her. Let me ask you something. What is your final mission for this trial? Her eyes flashed. You're really not a student? Then how did you get to Earth? This place is under the surveillance of the Great Yu Empire. You can't just come and go as you please. Lu Yin turned to leave. Geraldine shouted, "Wait, I'm just curious, I won't ask anymore. Our mission is to hunt down a fugitive." Lu Yin turned around curiously. "A fugitive?" Geraldine nodded. "We were notified the day before the trial that a fugitive had entered Earth through the surveillance network and caused the planet to evolve. The Empire originally didn't want us to come to this planet for the trial, but since Earth has evolved, they had no choice but to change the location. That's why we were delayed for a few months, otherwise we would have arrived a few months ago." "You weren't the one who caused Earth's evolution?" Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 19. Geraldine shook her head. "No, the planet we were supposed to train on is quite far from Earth." Lu Yin hadn't expected to receive such information. Earth's evolution hadn't been caused by the Great Yu Empire, but rather from within. The fugitive Neptune. Could it be that corpse? What's the fugitive's identity? Geraldine coughed a few times. "No, I don't know. His identity is top secret, no one knows his face or name." "Then how are you going to find him?" "That's a mission, a trial mission can't be that simple." "Even if you do find the fugitive, do you think you students can catch him?" Lu Yin was puzzled. "He escaped from the inner verse to the outer verse and was heavily injured long ago. It's impossible for him to retain strength beyond the Melder realm. Everything on him has been destroyed and he's lost all means of survival." 10 minutes later, Geraldine was released, and Lu Yin had someone bring her to a bath and treat her injuries. Geraldine didn't appear in front of Lu Yin for an entire day, and it wasn't until the afternoon of the second day that they met again. Although half a month had been painful, her injuries had all healed except for her right shoulder. This was the power of the universe's special healing medicine. When they met again, Lu Yin brought her to a spacious grassland in Zhou Xian. "You've recovered except for your shoulder. How about it? Do you want to try and defeat me and let me have a taste of the pain of being imprisoned?" Geraldine glared at Lu Yin, her hands and feet still bound by chains. Lu Yin smiled. "Stop pretending, these things can't bind you with your strength." She broke free of the chains with a bang, but a piercing pain shot through her right arm. Her face paled as she sighed. "I said I'd help you." Lu Yin took out Terrence's gun from his waist and tossed it to the ground. "You shouldn't be afraid now that you don't have this gun." Geraldine looked at the energy gun that Lu Yin had tossed to the ground in astonishment. It was Terrence's life-saving weapon that could threaten even sentinels, which was why Geraldine was wary of Lu Yin. But now Lu Yin had voluntarily given it up? "Come on, you can try to defeat me. If you win, Nanjing will be yours and you'll even get your revenge." "How great would that be?" Geraldine's eyes lit up, and with a flick of her long hair she charged towards Lu Yin. She was going to go all out even if she could only use one hand. She was confident that she could at least fight to a draw, even if she couldn't defeat this person easily. Sparks flew from Geraldine's feet as she approached Lu Yin. Sparks flew as her left palm swept across the ground. Blazing palm. Lu Yin saw Geraldine's blazing palm coming at him, but he easily dodged it with the roving step and casually tossed out a fire crystal. "That's not enough." Geraldine was astonished, but he did not hesitate. Since he had already made a move, he would go all out. The fire crystal shattered, creating a raging inferno that soared into the sky. Geraldine leapt over the flames and turned his left palm. The flames seemed to have a mind of their own as they gathered together. Then an even darker flame appeared in the center of his palm, and he slammed it towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He retreated half a body's length and raised his right palm. Stars appeared in his palm as he slapped towards Geraldine's flame palm. Bang! The shockwave split the ground apart as a wave of heat surged. The flames swept high into the sky before exploding into countless sparks. A powerful shockwave erupted between the two, and Geraldine spat out a mouthful of blood as she was sent flying. She crashed heavily onto the ground and spat out another mouthful of blood. Lu Yin did not move from his spot and his expression did not even change. When he was a seeker, he had been able to heavily injure Terrence with his palm of Sirius. Now that they were both sentinels with similar power levels, the Sirius palm had grown even stronger. He had shown mercy by not killing Geraldine. Geraldine collapsed to the ground and stared at him in shock. How is this possible? She knew how powerful this person's battle technique was. He had defeated her blazing palm when he had just become a sentinel, but she had still been injured at the time and had not been able to use her full strength. This time, however, she had used her full strength, and this person had not even taken a single step back. The soldiers from the camp quickly rushed over, but Lu Yin ordered them to retreat. He walked over to Geraldine. Do you still want to resist? Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, her beautiful face pale. What battle technique? Lu Yin sneered. Triple shockwave palm. How is this possible? It's not a shockwave palm at all, she said weakly. Lu Yin smiled as he picked up the gun. Haven't you heard of a legend? A powerhouse once used a 100-fold shockwave palm to shatter a star. A triple shockwave palm can easily defeat you. Geraldine was still immersed in shock and disbelief. It was hard to accept that someone who had once been able to suppress her so easily had now defeated her. Go heal yourself. From now on you're my personal bodyguard. Lu Yin smiled at Geraldine before turning to leave. Geraldine felt bitter and spat out another mouthful of blood. No wonder this bastard had asked her to act, he had wanted to subdue her. Lu Yin was excited when he returned to his residence. Although his power level was only 1,500 with the serious palm, even Terence would not be a match for him. He finally had the ability to protect himself. Lu Yin had Zhou Xian stand guard outside and announced that he was going into seclusion. He took out a star crystal from the sealed training room in Zhou Xian and crushed it. Instead of absorbing it, he took out his die. The die had been dim ever since its last use, but he had observed it a few times and found that it was slowly recovering. He guessed that it needed star energy to do so. As soon as the die was taken out, the star energy that filled the training room surged towards it and was absorbed by it. The dim glow on its surface gradually recovered as Lu Yin took out star crystals one by one. Finally, when there was only one star crystal left, the die returned to its original appearance. It was shrouded in a hazy radiance. Lu Yin wiped his forehead. This thing required too much star energy. He calculated that the star crystals that Geraldine had stored and the energy that Terence had absorbed over the past few days would require close to half a cubic meter of star crystals. And that wasn't even counting the burst of energy that Terence had given Geraldine when he broke through to the Sentinel realm. If everything was added up, it would probably require a cubic meter of star crystals. The amount of star crystals that Terence had brought with him for this trial was already his limit. Even a rich student wouldn't be able to get a single cube of star crystals, which showed just how precious this thing was. Every time it was used, it would consume a cube of star crystals. Lu Yin felt that he would be very poor in the future, and he had to find a way to become rich or he would not be able to afford this. He would not give up on the die. It had given him the heaven-defying serious art on his first use, and who knew what it would bring him in the future. Most importantly, there were no repercussions and no one would know that he had stolen. No taken, the die was a cheat for many people. Even if it was 10 or 100, he would still use it, let alone a cubic meter of star energy. Lu Yin looked at the die floating in the air and gulped, rubbing his hands together. Come on, it's time to show off my luck. I hope it'll bring me something good this time. He tapped the die lightly as if he was on a pilgrimage, causing it to spin rapidly. The numbers on the last 5 faces disappeared, leaving only a single face, 4. Lu Yin was puzzled, but before he could think any further, his surroundings changed. The training room was gone and Mount Zhong was gone. All he saw was an endless gray space with no end in sight. He looked up and saw endless darkness, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to be made of some unknown material, but it seemed to be quite sturdy. Behind him, a series of numbers slowly changed. 25920, 25919, 25919, 25919, 25919. Lu Yin inexplicably thought of the use of this space. It was the time-stop space. Lu Yin was shocked. What the hell was this? This was a name he had only heard of in legends. How could his die have such a function? For meant that he could stay in the time-stop space for 3 days, and the numbers behind represented the number of seconds. In other words, the time in the outside world would not change even if he stayed in this space until the last second. Lu Yin sighed as he looked at the slowly changing numbers. Was his innate gift a little too terrifying? He shook his head and shook off these distracting thoughts. He raised his hand and the die appeared once more, but this time it was dim and lightless. Lu Yin finally understood why this thing had consumed so much star energy. He felt like the amount of star energy he had consumed was too little compared to the space he had obtained. He took out the last star crystal and threw it at the numbers. It instantly turned into a stream of light and disappeared, and the number increased by 5 seconds. Lu Yin's face twitched. 5 seconds was too little. He was speechless. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 20. The initial space would last for 3 days, and if he wanted to use more star crystals to increase his time, the cost would be huge. A fist-sized star crystal would only increase his time by 5 seconds, and a cubic star crystal would only increase his time by 80 minutes, which was equivalent to 20 minutes per hour. His cultivation, battle techniques, weapons, energy sources, dice, time and so on. He realized that he needed star crystals for everything, and his premonition was growing stronger. Perhaps he would need to do something bad in the future for star crystals, such as robbing people? Interstellar pirate might be a good career. Lu Yin looked around. He had to stay here for 3 days, which was a rather awkward time. He didn't have enough time to train in the serious palm, and he had no star crystals to absorb. As for other things, he could only train in one battle technique, the space render palm. The space render palm was an advanced version of the shockwave palm. It was also a common battle technique, but it was far more demanding on the physical body than the shockwave palm. There weren't many melders who could use the space render palm, but it was perfect for Lu Yin. He had no energy and he was confident in his physical body. The space render palm was stronger than the shockwave palm, and more importantly, it was a long-range attack that could make up for Lu Yin's shortcomings. Although Lu Yin hadn't trained in it, he had never stopped training his body. Fortunately, the shockwave palm didn't have a high star energy requirement, or he wouldn't have been able to kill Vesta with it. Star energy filled the entire universe, but every planet had its own ecosystem that was different from star energy. A battle technique like the shockwave palm that relied on the physical body was even rarer. It was a pity that many people didn't have access to powerful battle techniques, but they didn't know that most of the time such techniques couldn't be used at all. The numbers in the time-stop space dwindled and Lu Yin continued to sweat profusely. 3 days passed by quickly. When the countdown ended, the scene in front of Lu Yin's eyes changed and he reappeared in the training room. His surroundings hadn't changed at all, but he quickly checked the time. Indeed, only 1 second had passed after 3 days of hard work. Lu Yin took a shower and rested for the rest of the day before meeting Geraldine again the next day. At this moment, Geraldine was looking at Lu Yin with a hint of dread. "Do you know your duty?" he asked casually. "Your bodyguard," she whispered. "Let's go, the executioner should be waking up soon." Zhou Xian had been receiving intensive treatment all this time, and his injuries were far worse than Geraldine's. If not for Lu Yin's intervention, he would have been killed by Orton, and before that he had been attacked by Terence. After half a month of treatment, Zhou Xian lost a lot of weight. When Lu Yin brought Geraldine out of the room, Feng Hong hurriedly stood up. "Brother Lu, no, the executioner is awake." He didn't want to be called the hidden sage, especially when the second batch of students was about to arrive. It would be easy for him to become a target, but now that Nanjing was being called that and he was already in the realm of sky, he couldn't refute it. "Got it. You guys stay outside, I'll go in," Lu Yin said indifferently as he walked past Feng Hong and the others into the ward. Feng Hong looked at Geraldine warily. This woman was an alien. Geraldine didn't care about Feng Hong. To be more precise, she didn't care about anyone other than Lu Yin. If Lu Yin hadn't come from outer space, it would have taken some time for her dignity to submit to him. Other than Zhou Xian, Xianxia was also in the ward. The moment she saw Lu Yin enter, she stood in front of Zhou Xian with a wary expression. Lu Yin found it funny. "I'm just talking to the executioner, you don't mind, right?" Xianxia muttered to herself. "Xianxia, move aside," Zhou Xian said weakly. Xianxia hesitated, but in the end he stepped aside and stood to the side. Lu Yin looked at her. "You can leave first." Her expression changed as she looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian nodded and allowed her to leave. Xianxia left reluctantly. "I'm sorry, she's too worried about me," Zhou Xian said softly, gesturing for Lu Yin to sit. Lu Yin sat beside the bed and smiled. She's afraid that I'll hurt you. Zhou Xian smiled. If you wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't be alive now. I heard that you've given up on the northern front lines and decided to focus on Nanjing in the west? Lu Yin nodded and walked to the window, looking out at the chaos in Nanjing. Zombies are the most abundant in the first half of the year, but they aren't very aggressive and don't do much damage to cultivators. Mutated beasts are different. The longer the time passes, the stronger they become. If the front lines of the camp are stretched too long, it'll collapse. It's precisely because the apocalypse has only been going on for half a year that I want to contact the others as soon as possible and work together to reclaim China. This is also why Zhao Yu took the risk to come to Nanjing. Lu Yin turned back to look at him. How many casualties do you have every day? How long can you open up? I had Luo Yi report to you that a zombie king has appeared in your so-called safe passage. The zombie king has intelligence and can evolve. It can even devour strange things to produce a different kind of attack. It's not something a captain can deal with. Can you go to the front lines personally? How far can you go? Can you guarantee that there won't be any realm of sky mutant beasts? Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment before bitterly replying, I know, but I have to get through the capital. I want to know what happened back then and perhaps find the root of the apocalypse. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. The root of the apocalypse? Zhou Xian looked at Lu Yin solemnly. Back then, China brought back a corpse from Neptune and obtained some information. We used this information to get ahead of everyone else and became the 7 sages after the apocalypse. However, there was something wrong with that corpse. The Science and Technology Department detected an unusual substance that could cause cells to mutate. I'm guessing that the apocalypse came from that corpse. What happened after that? Lu Yin asked. Zhou Xian said bitterly, the Science and Technology Department can't control those extraordinary substances at all. That's why Number 1 ordered the corpse to be transported away. At the same time, the 7 of us were separated to guard various parts of China. Perhaps Number 1 had already guessed something at that time, but on the day the corpse was transported away, the end of the world came. Lu Yin stared at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian stared blankly at the ceiling. We don't know what happened, only that the world changed in an instant. The researchers of the Science and Technology Department Number 1 and many others died in an explosion. We tried our best to contact them, but we didn't know what happened. Even Zhang Dingtian in the capital didn't know. What about the corpse? Lu Yin hurriedly asked. The corpse was the most important thing to him. It contained a formcast model, and it was likely to be the fugitive from the inner verse that the students had been searching for. Zhou Xian shook his head. I don't know, there was only a crater filled with lava at the scene. All information was lost in the explosion and it brought about the apocalypse. Lu Yin turned around and saw that Zhou Xian wasn't lying. He had worked hard to find the corpse and had even traveled all the way from Hubei to Nanjing, but even the 7 sages didn't know where it was. It seemed that he had to make a trip to the capital. Have a good rest, I'll be leaving, Lu Yin said. You're leaving Nanjing? Zhou Xian asked. Lu Yin looked at Zhou Xian. Do you want me to leave? Of course not, Nanjing can only be defended if you stay. I can sense that you're very strong. You were able to injure the strongest alien when you were only in the realm of Earth. Now that you're in the realm of Sky, you're definitely stronger than me. I want you to stay. The camp will listen to your orders and even I will listen to them, Zhou Xian said solemnly. Lu Yin was surprised. Why? Even if I leave, Nanjing will still be your world and you'll still be the executioner. Zhou Xian laughed bitterly. Do you think we want that title? I'm only protecting Nanjing because Number 1 ordered me to. I'm a soldier and I'll carry out my orders regardless of whether glory exists or not. The survival of the millions of people in Nanjing is more important than anything else, so I want you to stay and protect them. Lu Yin stared into Zhou Xian's eyes, and Zhou Xian met his gaze without backing down. After a while, Lu Yin nodded, I'll stay for the time being, and walked out of the ward. Zhou Xian heaved a sigh of relief and looked out the window. The battle half a month ago had left an unforgettable impression on him. The so-called executioner was nothing more than an ant, and the pressure of protecting the lives of millions of people was too great. He sincerely hoped that Lu Yin would stay. Only by living would there be a future. Everything he had told Lu Yin was top secret, but it was also a sign of his sincerity. Xianxia hurried in after leaving the ward. Lu Ying nodded to Feng Hong and left with Geraldine. A soldier was a heavy term that represented a sense of responsibility. This responsibility was too great and Lu Ying didn't want to shoulder it. He respected Zhou Xian, but that didn't mean that he would stay and help him forever. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.